They say you can disappear in a city of millions. I did, until the night a monster decided I was worth keeping. My name is Lana Hart, and 6 months ago, I was nobody. A ghost in an apron, serving people who'd forget my face before dessert arrived. Then Nikolai Volkov walked into that restaurant, and everything I thought I knew about survival shattered. He saw me when I was invisible, owned me when I had nothing left to lose, loved me in ways that should have killed us both. This is how a waitress became a queen in a kingdom built on blood. Drop a comment with your city. Let me see how far this story travels. Hit that like button, and let's begin. The rain came down like bullets that November night. Lena stood at the service station, rolling silverware into cloth napkins with mechanical precision. Her fingers moved without thought. Fork, knife, spoon, roll, tie. Fork, knife, spoon, roll, tie, tie. The rhythm kept her anchored when everything else felt like it was slipping away. Augustino's was the kind of restaurant where people dropped a month of her rent on a single meal. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, waiters who spoke 3 languages and moved like dancers. Lena spoke English and high school Spanish, moved like someone who'd been on her feet for 12 hours, and counted tips in her head while smiling at people who never looked back. Table 7 needs water, Marco hissed as he breezed past, his tray loaded with wine that cost more than her car payment. Lena grabbed a pitcher and headed out. Table 7. Anniversary couple. The woman wore diamonds that caught the light every time she laughed. The man checked his phone between courses. Lena filled their glasses, invisible as air, and returned to her station. Her feet screamed. Her lower back had that deep ache that wouldn't quit no matter how many ibuprofen she swallowed. She had 4 hours left on her shift, then a 40-minute bus ride home to an apartment that smelled like mildew and disappointment. This was her life. Had been for 3 years. She was 26 and exhausted in ways that sleep couldn't fix. Lena. Antonio, the floor manager, appeared at her elbow. His cologne was expensive. His smile wasn't. "We need you on the floor tonight." Vanessa called in sick. Lena's stomach dropped. Floor meant the main dining room. Floor meant she'd be visible, which meant more opportunities to screw up, which meant Antonio would have more reasons to write her up. She'd already been written up twice this month. Once for being 4 minutes late after the bus broke down, once for attitude when she'd asked if she could leave early for her mom's doctor appointment. "Sure," she said, because what else could she say? Antonio's smile sharpened. "Remember, smile, eye contact, make them feel special. That's what they're paying for." He walked away, and Lena took a breath that didn't quite fill her lungs. She smoothed her apron, checked her reflection in the stainless steel of the water station. Dark circles under brown eyes. Hair pulled back so tight it made her scalp ache. She looked tired. She looked poor. She looked exactly like what she was. The dining room hummed with quiet wealth, conversations about vacation homes and stock portfolios, laughter that sounded effortless. Lena moved between tables, refilling drinks, clearing plates, existing just enough to be useful, but not enough to be noticed. Then the front door opened and the whole room went quiet. It wasn't a loud entrance. No announcement, no fanfare. But something shifted in the air, some primal instinct that made people look up from their conversations and turn toward the door. 3 men walked in. The first 2 were big, not gym big, the kind of big that came from violence and genetics. Dark suits, dead eyes, hands that stayed near their waistbands in a way that made Lena's pulse spike, even though she didn't know why. But it was the third man who made her forget how to breathe. He was tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the kind of easy confidence that came from never having to prove anything. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from stone, sharp jaw, high cheekbones, eyes so pale they looked silver in the chandelier light. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than she made in 6 months, and he wore it like armor. The hostess materialized, all smiles and deference. "Mr. Volkov, your table is ready." The name meant nothing to Lena, but the way the hostess said it, like a prayer, like a warning, that meant something. He didn't acknowledge her, just walked past, his men flanking him, and the entire restaurant seemed to exhale only after he had disappeared into the private dining area. "Who is that?" Lena whispered to Marco as he passed. Marco's face went carefully blank. "Nobody you want to know. Stay away from the private room tonight. Antonio will handle it." That should have been the end of it. Lena should have stayed in her section, kept her head down, finished her shift. But 20 minutes later, Antonio grabbed her arm hard enough to bruise. "I need you to cover the private room." You said, I don't care what I said. Elena's kid is sick. She had to leave. You're up. Fear spiked through her. Marco said, Marco doesn't sign your paychecks, I do. Antonio's fingers dug deeper. 3 courses. Don't talk unless spoken to. Don't make eye contact. Do not screw this up, Lena. I mean it. He shoved a tray at her, appetizers gleaming and perfect, and pushed her toward the hallway that led to the private dining rooms. Her hands shook as she balanced the tray. This was bad. Everything about this felt bad. But she needed this job, needed the money. Her mom's medication cost $400 a month, and insurance covered maybe half of that. The electric bill was overdue. The car needed new brakes. She couldn't afford to say no. The private room was at the end of a long hallway, oak door closed. Lena used her hip to push it open, keeping her eyes on the tray, on the food, on anything but the men inside. Appetizers, she said quietly, moving to the table. The 2 guards stood against the wall, watching her with eyes that tracked movement like predators. At the table, Volkov sat alone, a tumbler of something amber in his hand. He didn't look up as she approached. Lena set down the plates with careful precision. Seared scallops, carpaccio, some kind of tart that probably had a French name she couldn't pronounce. Her pulse hammered in her throat. Will there be anything else? She asked the table. Not him. Never him. Silence. She turned to leave. Stop. The word was quiet, almost gentle, but it froze her mid-step like a hand around her throat. Lena turned back slowly. Volkov was looking at her now, really looking, and the weight of his attention made her skin prickle. Your name, he said, not a question. Lena. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Lena Hart. He took a slow sip of his drink, never breaking eye contact. You're afraid. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. No. Liar. The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile, something harder than that. He set down his glass and leaned back in his chair, studying her like she was a problem he was trying to solve. Do you know who I am, Lena Hart? She should lie. Should say yes. Should say she'd heard all about him. Should do whatever would get her out of this room fastest. But her mouth said, no. Something flickered in those pale eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or interest. Good. He picked up his fork, dismissed her with his attention. You can go. Lena fled. Her heart didn't stop racing until she was back in the main dining room, surrounded by normal people having normal dinners. She avoided the private room for the rest of the night, let Antonio handle the remaining courses. When her shift finally ended at midnight, she changed out of her uniform in the staff bathroom and slipped out the back entrance into the rain. The bus stop was 3 blocks away. The streets were empty, slick with rain, lit by streetlights that turned everything yellow and sickly. Lena pulled her jacket tighter and walked fast, keys threaded through her fingers the way her mom had taught her. Footsteps behind her. She walked faster. The footsteps matched her pace. Her apartment was 20 minutes away by bus. The police station was... She didn't know where the police station was. There was a 24-hour diner 2 blocks up. Lights, people, witnesses. The footsteps got closer. Lena broke into a run. She made it half a block before a hand grabbed her arm and spun her around. She swung her keys at the attacker's face, connected with something solid, heard a grunt of pain. Jesus, stop! I'm not... The man staggered back, hand pressed to his bleeding cheek. Not a mugger. One of Volkov's guards from the restaurant. What the hell? Lena gasped, backing away. I'll scream. Mr. Volkov wants to see you. The words made no sense. What? Now, come with me. I'm not going anywhere with you. A black SUV pulled up to the curb, smooth and silent. The back door opened, and there, in the leather interior, sat Nikolai Volkov. Get in, Lena, he said. Not a request. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but the guard's hand was still on her arm, and there was nowhere to run to, and Volkov was looking at her with those pale eyes that saw too much. I just want to go home, she said. I know. He shifted, making room. 5 minutes. Then Dmitri will drive you wherever you want to go. It was a terrible idea. Possibly the worst idea. But Lena was tired and scared, and the rain was soaking through her jacket, and 5 minutes would get her a ride home instead of an hour-long wait for a bus that might not come. She got in the car. The door closed behind her with a heavy, final sound. The interior smelled like leather and rain and expensive cologne. Volkov sat close enough that she could feel the heat coming off him, far enough that she didn't feel trapped. The car started moving. "Where do you live?" he asked. "Parkview Apartments, on 5th. He said something in Russian to the driver, then turned back to her. In the passing streetlights, his face was all shadows and angles, handsome in a way that felt dangerous. "You're not what I expected," he said. "I don't know what that means. Most people know who I am. They're afraid before I even speak. Should I be afraid?" He smiled then, a real smile, brief and sharp. "Probably." Lena's heart kicked against her ribs. "Then why am I in your car?" "Because I wanted to talk to you, because you're the first person in 5 years to look at me and see a man instead of a monster." He paused. "Because you're beautiful when you're scared, and I wanted to see if you're beautiful when you're not." The honesty of it stole her breath. She should be terrified. She was terrified. But something in his voice, something raw and true, made her meet his eyes instead of looking away. "I'm not beautiful," she said. Another lie. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull back, and brushed a strand of wet hair from her face. His fingers were warm. "You wear yourself like armor, tired clothes, no makeup, hair pulled back so tight it must hurt. You want to disappear." "I can't afford not to disappear." "Why?" The question was too big, too complicated. But his hand was still near her face, and the car was warm, and she was so tired of carrying everything alone. "Because people who get noticed get hurt," she said quietly. "Because I can't afford to lose my job. Because my mom is sick, and the medications cost more than I make, and if I draw attention to myself, Antonio will find a reason to fire me. Because I've been invisible for so long, I don't remember how to be anything else." Volkov's expression shifted, something dark and cold moving behind his eyes. "Antonio, your manager." "Yes." "He hurts you." "He's just—" "Does he hurt you, Lena?" The way he said it made it impossible to lie. "Sometimes. Not like that. He just grabs sometimes. When he's angry. It's fine." "It's not fine." The car pulled up outside her apartment building, 4 stories of peeling paint and broken security lights. Her home, such as it was. Volkov looked at the building, then back at her. "I'm going to give you my number." "Why?" "Because the next time someone hurts you, I want you to call me." "I don't even know you." "No," he agreed, "but you will." He pulled out a phone, sleek, expensive, and held it out. "Your number." This was insane. She should get out of the car, go upstairs, forget this ever happened. Instead, she heard herself reciting her number, watched him save it, felt her own phone buzz a second later with a text from an unknown number. "That's me," he said. "Anytime, day or night. You call, I answer." "Why are you doing this?" He looked at her for a long moment, and something in his face softened in a way that made him look almost human. "Because I know what it's like to be invisible. And I know what it's like when someone finally sees you." He reached past her and opened her door. "Go inside, Lena Hart. Lock your door. Sleep." She got out on shaking legs. The rain had stopped, leaving everything slick and gleaming. She looked back at him through the open door. "I won't call," she said. His smile was sad and knowing. "Yes, you will." The door closed. The SUV pulled away, and Lena stood on the sidewalk, phone burning in her pocket, wondering what the hell she'd just done. She didn't call. Not that night, not the next day. She went to work, endured Antonio's grabbing hands and sharp comments, came home to her apartment and her sick mother and bills she couldn't pay. The number sat in her phone like a secret. 3 days later, everything changed. It started with a customer complaint. Some banker type in an expensive suit claiming Lena had been rude, had rolled her eyes, had provided terrible service. It was a lie. She'd barely spoken to him beyond taking his order. But Antonio called her into his office anyway. "This is the 3rd complaint this month," he said, even though it wasn't, even though he was lying. "I didn't do anything wrong. The customer says otherwise." He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "I'm going to have to let you go, Lena." The world tilted. "What? No, Antonio, please." You're fired. Clean out your locker and leave. I need this job. My mom should have thought of that before you started acting like you're too good for this place. He stood, came around the desk, grabbed her arm. Out, now. His fingers dug into the same bruise from 3 days ago. Pain shot up her arm, sharp enough to make her gasp. And something inside her, something that had been bending for years, finally snapped. She yanked her arm away. Don't touch me! Antonio's face went red. What did you say? I said don't touch me. You don't get to grab me anymore. You don't get to hurt me. You little... He lunged for her. Lena stumbled back, fear and fury mixing in her chest. Her phone was in her pocket. The number was in her phone. She pulled it out with shaking hands and dialed. He answered on the first ring. Lena? Just her name. Just that. But the sound of his voice made something in her chest crack open. I need help, she whispered. Where are you? Agostino's, the restaurant. Antonio is... I'm coming. Stay on the line. Antonio was yelling now. Something about insubordination, about how she'd never work in this city again. Lena backed toward the door, phone pressed to her ear, Volkov's breathing steady and calm on the other end. I'm scared, she said. I know. 10 minutes. Can you stay safe for 10 minutes? I think so. Then breathe, Lena. Just breathe. I'm coming. She made it to the dining room before Antonio caught up. Grabbed her shoulder, spun her around. You walk out that door, you're done. You hear me? Done. Let her go. The voice came from the entrance. Volkov stood in the doorway, rain-soaked and furious, his guards flanking him like wolves. He looked at Antonio the way someone might look at an insect, with cold, detached disgust. The restaurant went silent. Mr. Volkov. Antonio's voice cracked. This is a misunderstanding. Volkov walked past him like he didn't exist. Came straight to Lena. His hands were gentle when they touched her arms, his eyes searching her face for damage. Did he hurt you? She couldn't speak. Could only nod. Something terrible moved behind Volkov's eyes. He turned to Antonio slowly. You touched her. She was being insubordinate. You touched her. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. One of the guards moved forward, and Antonio went pale. It was nothing, Antonio stammered. Just a workplace disagreement. Volkov's voice was soft as a knife. Dmitri, make sure this man never works in food service again. Not in this city. Not anywhere. He looked at Antonio. You put your hands on her. Now you lose everything. You can't. I can. I am. He turned back to Lena, and his voice gentled. Get your things. You don't work here anymore. She should protest. Should say she needed the job, needed the money. But Volkov's hand was warm on her arm, and Antonio's face was gray with fear. And she was so tired of being small. She got her things. The apartment Volkov took her to wasn't hers. It was in a building with a doorman and an elevator that didn't smell like piss. 20th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Furniture that looked like it cost more than she made in a year. This is temporary, he said, setting her bag down. Until we figure out what comes next. Lena stood in the middle of the living room, overwhelmed. I can't afford this. You're not paying for it. Nikolai, sit down before you fall down. You're shaking. She was. Her whole body was trembling, adrenaline crash hitting hard. She sank onto the couch, and Volkov disappeared into the kitchen. Came back with water and something stronger. Drink, he said. She drank. The vodka burned going down, but it steadied her. He sat across from her, elbows on his knees, watching her with those two pale eyes. Tell me about your mother. What? You said she's sick. Tell me. It poured out of her then. The diagnosis, the medications, the doctors who didn't take their insurance, the bills piling up. The second job she'd been working weekends until she got too exhausted and screwed up and got fired. How she sent her mom money every month even though her own rent was 3 weeks late. Volkov listened without interrupting. When she finally ran out of words, he pulled out his phone and made a call. Dmitri, I need information on a woman. Name is... He looked at Lena. Rebecca Hart, she whispered. Rebecca Hart. Medical history, current providers, outstanding bills, everything. He hung up, looked at her. It's handled. What's handled? Your mother's medical care. As of tomorrow, all bills are paid. She'll be transferred to a better facility with better doctors. Lena's chest went tight. I can't let you do that. You're not letting me. I'm doing it. Why? The word came out broken. Why are you doing any of this? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and crossed to the windows, looking out at the city lights. Because I'm a very bad man, Lena. I've done things that would make you run if you knew. I've hurt people, killed people, built an empire on blood and fear. He turned to look at her. But when I look at you, I want to be different. I want to be the man who protects instead of destroys. And maybe that's selfish. Maybe it's just another way of taking something that isn't mine. But I can't stop. The honesty of it was brutal, terrifying, and somehow more real than anything anyone had ever said to her. What do you want from me? She asked. Nothing you're not willing to give. He came back, crouched in front of her so they were eye level. But I won't lie to you. I want everything. I want to know you, keep you, make sure nothing ever hurts you again. And I know that's too much, too fast. I know I should walk away and let you have a normal life with a normal man who doesn't have blood on his hands. But you won't. No! His hand came up, cupped her face. I won't. Because I'm a selfish man, Lena Hart. And now that I've seen you, I can't unsee you. She should pull away, run. This was dangerous. He was dangerous. But his hand was warm, and she was so tired of being cold. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Neither do I. He smiled, and it was almost sad. We'll figure it out together. He stood, put distance between them. The bedroom is through there. Everything you need should be in the bathroom. Sleep. Tomorrow, we'll talk about what comes next. Where will you be? Here, making sure you're safe. She wanted to argue, wanted to say she didn't need protecting. But the truth was, she did. Had needed it for years. And for the first time in her life, someone was offering it without asking for her soul in return. She went to bed in a stranger's apartment, wearing borrowed clothes, her whole life upended in the span of 3 days. And when she finally slept, she dreamed of pale eyes and gentle hands, and a voice that promised she'd never be invisible again. Bummed. Morning came too bright. Lena woke to sunlight streaming through windows she didn't recognize, in a bed that felt like sleeping on clouds. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then it all came rushing back. Antonio, the phone call, Volkov's hand on her face. She got up, found her phone on the nightstand. 7 missed calls from her mom. Panic spiked through her until she saw the texts. Honey, what's happening? Some men came this morning and said all my bills are paid. They moved me to a new room. There's a TV, a private bathroom. Are you okay? Call me. Lena's hands shook as she typed back. I'm fine, Mom. It's complicated. I'll explain later. How do you feel? The response came fast. Better than I have in months. But Lena, this must have cost a fortune. What did you do? I got help. That's all. I love you. She got dressed in yesterday's clothes and went to find Volkov. He was in the kitchen making coffee like a normal person. No suit this morning, just dark jeans and a black t-shirt that showed the edges of tattoos on his arms. He looked younger, more human. Your mother is settled, he said without looking up. New room, new doctors, all bills paid through the year. I've arranged for a nurse to check on her daily. Lena's throat went tight. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. He poured coffee, handed her a cup. We need to talk about what happens now. I need to find a job. No. Nikolai, you need to stay here. Stay safe. He set down his cup. The man from the restaurant, the one who complained about you. His name is Marcus Reeves. He's connected to people who don't like me very much. The complaint wasn't random, Lena. It was targeted. Cold fear crept down her spine. What are you saying? I'm saying they know about you. And if they know about you, they'll use you to get to me. His jaw tightened. This is my fault. I should have stayed away. Should have known better than to what? Help me? Than to want you. The words were raw. Than to look at you and forget that everything I touch turns to ash. She set down her coffee and crossed to him. He tensed when she got close, like he was afraid she'd run. Instead, she reached up and touched his face, the first time she'd touched him deliberately, without fear. I'm not ash, she said quietly. His hand came up, covered hers. Not yet. Then don't make me into it. She stepped back. I'm not helpless, Nikolai. I've survived this long on my own. I can. No. The word was hard, final. You don't understand what these people are capable of, what they'll do to hurt me. Then tell me. Stop talking in riddles and just tell me the truth. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he pulled up his sleeve, showing her the tattoos that covered his forearm. Symbols she didn't recognize, words in Russian, and beneath them, scars, so many scars. I run things in this city that people don't talk about, he said. Import, export, protection, influence. I'm what happens when legitimate business gets too expensive or too slow. Politicians call me when they need problems to disappear. Businessmen pay me to make competitors vanish. I'm the monster in the dark that makes the machine run smoothly. He let his sleeve fall. And the people who want my territory, my power, my life, they'll use you to get it. They'll hurt you, take you, break you. And I can't. His voice cracked. I can't let that happen. Lena's heart hammered. She should be terrified, should run. But all she felt was a strange, fierce certainty. Then don't let it happen, she said. Teach me, protect me. But don't lock me away like I'm made of glass. You don't know what you're asking. Maybe not, but I know what I'm choosing. She stepped close again. You said you wanted everything. That works both ways. If I'm in this, I'm in all the way. No secrets. No hiding. Something shifted in his expression, surprise maybe, or hope. You're serious. I've been invisible my whole life, Nikolai. I'm tired of it. If being visible means danger, then teach me how to survive it. He studied her face like he was memorizing it. Then, slowly, he smiled. You're insane. Probably. This will ruin you. I'm already ruined. At least this way I get to choose how. He laughed, a real laugh, rough and surprised. Then he pulled her close, his forehead pressing against hers. You're going to destroy me, Lena Hart. Good, she whispered. Maybe we'll destroy each other. His mouth found hers then, fierce and hungry and desperate. She kissed him back with everything she had, all the fear and want and reckless courage that had been building since that first night in the restaurant. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he kept his hands on her face. No going back, he said. I know. This will get worse before it gets better. I know. And I'm going to be selfish with you, possessive, probably insufferable. She smiled against his mouth. I'm counting on it. He kissed her again, slower this time, like he was memorizing the taste of her, and Lena let herself fall into it, into him, knowing it was dangerous, knowing it was too fast, knowing she should be smarter than this. But she'd been smart her whole life, been careful, been invisible. And where had it gotten her? So she chose recklessness instead. Chose the monster who looked at her like she was something precious. Chose the danger and the darkness and the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, someone could see her and not look away. Behind them, Volkov's phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Finally, he pulled back with a curse. Checked the screen. His expression went cold. What is it? Lena asked. Marcus Reeves just turned up dead, execution-style, downtown parking garage. He looked at her. Someone's sending a message. To you? To everyone. He typed something fast, then pocketed the phone. Get dressed. We're leaving. Where are we going? His smile was sharp and dangerous. To show them exactly what happens when they threaten what's mine. And despite the fear curling in her gut, despite knowing this was the moment everything changed, Lena felt something fierce and wild bloom in her chest. She'd been nobody for so long. Maybe it was time to be somebody worth fearing. The warehouse district looked like something out of a nightmare. Lena sat in the back of the SUV, watching abandoned buildings slide past the tinted windows. Broken glass glittered on cracked pavement. Graffiti covered everything. This was the part of the city people pretended didn't exist. The bones showing through the skin. Nikolai sat beside her, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Russian. His voice was different now, harder. The gentleness from this morning had evaporated, replaced by something cold and sharp. English, Lena said quietly when he hung up. You promised no secrets. He looked at her, something complicated crossing his face. Then he nodded. Victor confirmed the kill. Professional job. 3 shots, close range. Whoever did this wanted it clean. But you didn't order it. No. His jaw tightened, which means someone else is making moves. Using Reeves's death to muddy the water, make it look like I'm starting a war. The SUV turned down an alley and stopped. Dmitri killed the engine. Outside, 2 more black vehicles waited, men in dark suits standing guard. "Stay close to me," Nikolai said, opening the door. "Don't speak unless I tell you to, and if anything happens, anything, you run. Understand?" Lena's mouth went dry. "What's going to happen?" "Hopefully nothing, but hope doesn't keep you alive." He touched her face briefly. "Trust me." She followed him out into the cold. The warehouse loomed ahead, rust-red brick and shattered windows. The kind of place where bad things happened and nobody asked questions. Men materialized from the shadows as they approached. Not Nikolai's men. These wore different colors, moved with different energy. One of them, young and tattooed with a scar running through his eyebrow, stepped forward. "Volkov, boss is waiting inside." "Then let's not keep him waiting." The interior of the warehouse was worse than the outside. Concrete floors stained with things Lena didn't want to think about. Flickering fluorescent lights that made everyone look corpse pale. And in the center, sitting at a card table like he owned the world, was a man who made Lena's skin crawl. He was older than Nikolai, maybe 50, with silver hair and a face that had seen too much violence to ever look kind. He smiled when they entered, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Nikolai," punctual as always. "Sergei?" Nikolai's voice was flat. "You wanted to talk. I'm here." Sergei's gaze slid to Lena. "And you brought a guest. How unusual." "She's with me. That's all you need to know." "Touchy." Sergei gestured to the empty chairs across from him. "Sit. Let's discuss this misunderstanding like civilized people." They sat. Lena tried to make herself small, invisible, but Sergei kept looking at her with eyes that made her feel naked. "Marcus Reeves," Sergei said, leaning back. "Sad business. I hear he had a wife. 2 kids. I didn't kill him." "Of course not. You're far too smart for something so crude." Sergei pulled out a cigarette, lit it slowly. "But someone wants me to think you did. Someone wants us at each other's throats." "We've been at each other's throats for 5 years, Sergei. This changes nothing." "It changes everything." Smoke curled between them. "Reeves worked for me. Not officially, but he passed information, useful information, about shipments, routes, payoffs. And now he's dead, and you're the only one who benefits." "I didn't know he worked for you." "Didn't you?" Sergei's eyes glittered. "Or did you just find out when he targeted your little waitress here?" Lena's blood went cold. Nikolai's hand found her knee under the table, squeezed once. A warning. "Leave her out of this," Nikolai said quietly. "How can I? She's the whole reason we're here." Sergei leaned forward. "See, I've been asking myself, why would Nikolai Volkov, who fucks models and socialites, suddenly obsess over a nobody? A girl with nothing, no connections, no value. And then I realized that's exactly the point. She's invisible, perfect for smuggling information, moving product, playing the long game. She's not, or maybe you're just going soft. Maybe the great Volkov is finally thinking with his cock instead of his head." Sergei's smile sharpened. "Either way, it's a weakness, and weaknesses get exploited." Nikolai stood slowly. Around them, guns came out. Sergei's men, Nikolai's men, everyone suddenly armed and tense. "You threaten her," Nikolai said, "and there won't be enough of you left to bury. Not a threat, an observation." Sergei stubbed out his cigarette. "But since we're being honest, I didn't call this meeting to discuss Reeves. I called it to give you a choice. I'm listening. Walk away from the downtown territory, the port access, the 3 routes you stole from me last year. Give them back, and we forget this whole mess. Reeves, the girl, all of it." Silence stretched between them like a blade. "And if I refuse?" Nikolai asked. Sergei looked at Lena again. "Then I take what you care about. Simple economics, Nikolai. You taught me that." The temperature in the room dropped. Lena felt it in her bones. The moment before violence, that terrible stillness. "You have 24 hours, Sergei said, standing. "After that, all bets are off." He walked out, his men following. The warehouse emptied slowly, guns disappearing, tension bleeding away. But Nikolai stood frozen, staring at the space where Sergei had been. Nikolai? Lena touched his arm. He flinched like she'd burned him. Then he was moving, pulling her toward the exit, his grip tight enough to bruise. We're leaving. Now. They made it to the SUV before he exploded. I should have killed him. Should have put a bullet in his head the second he looked at you. He paced beside the vehicle, running hands through his hair. 5 years of careful balance, all of it for nothing, because I couldn't stay away from you. This isn't my fault. I know that. He spun on her. I know it's mine. I knew better. Knew the rules. You don't show weakness. You don't give them leverage. You don't... His voice cracked. You don't fall for someone who can be used against you. The words hung between them. Lena stepped closer. Is that what this is? You fell for me? He looked at her like she was killing him. From the second you spilled ice at my feet and didn't apologize. From the moment you looked at me without fear. From every word you've said since. He laughed, bitter. I'm a smart man, Lena. Built an empire on being 3 steps ahead. And you walked into my life and made me stupid. Then be stupid. She grabbed his jacket, pulled him close. Give him the territory. Walk away. I can't. Why not? Because if I give Sergei what he wants, it shows weakness. And weakness in this world is death. Every person I protect, every deal I've made, every promise, it all falls apart the second they think I'm soft. So what do we do? Nikolai's eyes went cold. We make sure he can't use you. We make you untouchable. How? He was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out his phone, made a call. Victor, I need everyone at the estate in 2 hours, all of them. We're making this official. He hung up and looked at Lena. There's only one way to protect you from Sergei. Only one thing that makes you completely off limits in our world. Understanding dawned slowly, terrifyingly. No. Marry me. The words should have been romantic, should have come with flowers and candlelight and bended knee. Instead, they came in a warehouse parking lot, surrounded by men with guns, from a man who looked like the decision was tearing him apart. You're insane, Lena whispered. Probably, but I'm also right. He stepped closer. A girlfriend, a lover, that's leverage, but a wife? That's sacred. In this world, you don't touch another man's wife. Not if you want to keep breathing. We've known each other less than a week. I know. This is crazy. I know. I don't love you. He smiled, sad and knowing. I know that too. But you will. Or you won't. Either way, you'll be alive to decide. Lena's head spun. This was too much, too fast. Marriage wasn't supposed to be a business transaction, a tactical move. It was supposed to be love and trust and building something together. But she thought about Sergei's eyes, about Antonio's hands, about every moment in her life when she'd been powerless while men decided her fate. And she thought about Nikolai, dangerous, damaged, devoted in his own broken way. Who looked at her like she mattered, who paid her mother's bills and killed her enemies and promised to keep her safe. Maybe love was a luxury she couldn't afford. If I say yes, she said slowly, what does that mean? Really? It means you're mine and I'm yours. It means anyone who touches you dies. It means you live in my world with all its ugliness and violence. It means giving up any chance at normal. I've never been normal. This is different, Lena. This is blood and bodies and choices that will haunt you. Once you're in, there's no walking away. She looked at him, really looked. Saw the scars and shadows, the violence barely contained. Saw the man who dropped everything to answer her call, who destroyed her boss and sheltered her mother and looked at her like she was worth protecting. Ask me properly, she said. Something shifted in his expression. He took her hand, held it like it was precious. Lena Hart, I'm offering you a life that will probably kill us both. I'm offering you danger and darkness and a husband who's done terrible things. But I'm also offering you protection, power, and a promise that nobody will ever hurt you again. His thumb brushed her knuckles. Will you marry me? It was the worst proposal in history. Lena said yes anyway. The estate sat outside the city, hidden behind gates and walls and men with rifles. Lena watched it approach through the car window, her heart hammering against her ribs. This is where you live? She asked. When I'm not in the city, safer out here, Easier to control who comes and goes. Nikolai glanced at her. It'll be your home too now, if you want it. Do I have a choice? You always have a choice, Lena. That's the point. The SUV rolled through the gates and up a long driveway lined with trees. The house itself was massive, stone and glass, old money trying to look new. Beautiful in a cold, empty way. Men stood on the steps, waiting. Lena recognized Dmitri and Victor. The others were strangers, but they all had that same dangerous look, predators in expensive suits. Stay close, Nikolai said as they got out. Let me do the talking. The men parted as Nikolai approached, their eyes sliding to Lena with undisguised curiosity. She lifted her chin, refused to look away. If she was doing this, she'd do it on her feet. Inside the house was warmer than she expected. Dark wood and leather, fireplaces and art that probably cost more than her childhood home. A place that tried to be comfortable but couldn't quite hide its teeth. Nikolai led her to a study where more men waited. These were older, harder, wearing their violence like cologne. Gentlemen, Nikolai said, his voice carrying authority. Thank you for coming on short notice. I have an announcement. He put his hand on Lena's lower back. The touch was possessive, protective. This is Lena Hart. As of tomorrow, she'll be my wife. She's under my protection. Anyone who touches her, threatens her, or even looks at her wrong answers to me personally. Silence. Then murmurs, raised eyebrows, calculating looks. A man with gray hair and a cruel mouth spoke up. Bit sudden, isn't it? We've never even heard of her. You're hearing now. Nikolai's voice went cold. Spread the word. Every crew, every contact, every person in our network, she's off limits. Completely. And if Sergei doesn't care about limits, then Sergei learns what happens when he crosses me. The gray-haired man's eyes narrowed. You're risking a lot for a woman you just met. Makes a man wonder about your judgment. Wonder all you want, Alexei. Just make sure the message gets out. More murmurs. Lena felt their judgment like hands on her skin. She wasn't what they expected. No polish, no pedigree, just a tired girl in yesterday's clothes who'd stumbled into something she barely understood. Victor stepped forward. The paperwork is ready. Judge Morrison can do the ceremony tomorrow morning. Quiet, legal, binding. Good. Nikolai looked at the assembled men. One more thing. If any of you have a problem with this, with her, now's the time to speak up or get out. Nobody moved. But Lena saw the calculation in their eyes, the wheels turning. She was a liability now, a target, and they were all wondering if she was worth the trouble. Then we're done here, Nikolai said. Out, all of you. They filed out slowly, leaving Lena alone with Nikolai in the study. She waited until the door closed before speaking. They think I'm your weakness. They're right. That doesn't scare you? He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed her one. Terrifies me. But I've been strong for 20 years, Lena. Built walls so high nobody could climb them. And I'm tired. Tired of being alone. Tired of trusting nobody. Tired of... He stopped, took a drink. You make me want to be weak. And that's either going to save me or kill me. Lena sipped the whiskey. It burned, but she was getting used to the burn. What happens tomorrow, after we're married? We make it public. Show Sergei he can't touch you. Show everyone that you're protected. And then? Then we figure out how to live with what we've done. He set down his glass and crossed to her. I know this isn't what you wanted. I know I'm asking you to give up everything normal and safe. But I'll try to make it worth it. I'll try to be... Don't. She put her hand on his chest. Don't make promises you can't keep. Just be honest. That's all I need. He covered her hand with his. Then honestly, I'm probably going to screw this up. I'm going to be possessive and controlling and make decisions you hate. I'm going to want to lock you away where nothing can hurt you, and you're going to fight me every step. Good, she said. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. He laughed, surprised. Then he kissed her, slower than before, deeper. Like he was trying to memorize the taste of her before everything changed. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Last chance to run, Lena Hart. I'm not running. Then hold on. It's going to get rough. That night, Lena slept in a bedroom bigger than her entire apartment. The bed was enormous. The sheets felt like water, and she lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering what the hell she'd agreed to. Somewhere in the house, Nikolai was awake too. She could feel it, his restlessness bleeding through walls and floors. Her phone buzzed, a text from her mother. "The nurses here are wonderful. I feel like a queen. Whatever you did, thank you. I love you, baby." Lena typed back with shaking hands. "I'm getting married tomorrow. Long story. I'll explain soon. Love you too." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, "To who?" "Lena, what's going on?" "Someone who can protect us." "I promise I'm okay." "Better than okay." "Are you sure?" No, she wasn't sure of anything, but she texted back, "Yes, trust me, always." Lena set down the phone and stared at the ceiling some more. Tomorrow she'd marry a man she barely knew. A criminal. A killer. Someone who'd shown her more protection in a week than she'd had in 26 years. She should be terrified. She was terrified. But beneath the fear was something else. Something fierce and hungry. A part of her that wanted this. Wanted the power, the safety, the feeling of being chosen. Maybe that made her broken too. Or maybe it just made her human. Morning came with gray skies and cold rain. Lena dressed in clothes that weren't hers, a simple cream dress that fit too well to be coincidence. Someone had known her size, anticipated this. The thought should have creeped her out. Instead, it just made her sad. This was her wedding day, and it felt like a business meeting. Nikolai waited in the hallway, wearing a dark suit that made him look like death in expensive fabric. He took one look at her and went very still. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. "I look scared." "That too." He held out his hand. "Ready?" "No." "Good. Neither am I." She took his hand anyway. The ceremony happened in Nikolai's study. Judge Morrison, a tired-looking man who asked no questions and made no small talk, ran through the words with mechanical efficiency. Victor and Dmitri stood as witnesses, their faces carefully blank. "Do you, Nikolai Volkov, take Lena Hart to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "And do you, Lena Hart, take Nikolai Volkov to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Lena's throat closed. This was it. The last moment to back out, run, choose safety over insanity. She looked at Nikolai. He looked back, and there was no pressure in his eyes, no demand, just quiet acceptance. Whatever she chose, he'd live with it. That's what made her say it. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Judge Morrison closed his book. "You may kiss the bride." Nikolai's hand cupped her face. "Last chance," he whispered. "Shut up and kiss me." He did. And for a moment, just a moment, it felt real. Felt like maybe this could be something other than survival. Then the judge left, Victor produced paperwork, and Lana signed her name next to Nikolai's, making it legal, making it permanent. "Congratulations," Victor said, shaking Nikolai's hand. "May you both live long enough to regret this." Nikolai laughed darkly. "I'm counting on it." Dmitri handed Lena a small box. Inside was a ring, platinum and diamonds, beautiful and cold. "It was my grandmother's," Nikolai said as he slipped it on her finger. "Only valuable thing she ever owned. She'd want you to have it." The weight of it felt like a shackle, or a shield. Lena couldn't tell which. "What now?" she asked. "Now we go public. Show the wolves you're off the menu." He made calls, sent messages, set things in motion. Within an hour, every major player in the city knew about the marriage. Within 2, the news had spread to the smaller crews, the street-level operators, everyone who lived in the shadows. Lena Hart, nobody waitress, was now Lena Volkov, wife of the most dangerous man in the city. And according to Nikolai, that should have made her safe. It didn't. The call came at 3 in the afternoon. Nikolai answered his phone, listened for 5 seconds, then went pale in a way that made Lena's stomach drop. "When?" he said, his voice deadly quiet. "How many?" A pause. "I'm on my way." He hung up and looked at her with eyes like winter. "Your mother's hospital. Someone tried to take her." Lena's world tilted. "What?" "2 men, posing as orderlies. They made it to her room before security stopped them." His jaw clenched. "She's safe. My men got there in time, but Lena..." "Who?" The word came out broken. Who would? Sergei. Nikolai's hands curled into fists. Sending a message. Showing me marriage doesn't mean protection if he can get to your family. Rage crashed through her, hot and terrible. I want to see her. It's not safe. I don't care. She's my mother. I want to see her now. Something in his expression shifted. He nodded once. Then we go together. But Lena, this changes things. I know. No, you don't. Gripped her shoulders. Sergei just declared war, and in war there are no rules, no mercy. Just blood and bodies until someone wins. Lena met his eyes, felt the rage in her chest crystallize into something harder, colder. Then we make sure we win, she said. Nikolai smiled. A terrible, beautiful thing. There's my wife. And for better or worse, Lena Volkov was born. The hospital corridor smelled like antiseptic and fear. Lena walked fast, her new husband's men forming a protective wall around her. 4 in front, 3 behind, Nikolai at her side with his hand on the small of her back. They moved through the building like an invasion force, and people scattered. Her mother's room was on the 4th floor, now guarded by 2 of Nikolai's people and 3 hospital security officers who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. One of them started to speak as they approached, but Dmitri cut him off with a look that could have stripped paint. She goes in alone, the guard said anyway, trying for authority. Hospital policy, her husband goes where she goes, Dmitri said flatly. You want to argue? Take it up with him. The guard looked at Nikolai and went pale. Smart man. Lena pushed through the door before anyone else could talk. Her mother sat propped up in bed, looking small and fragile against the white sheets. But her eyes were bright, sharp, taking in everything. Lena. Rebecca Hart's voice was steady, despite the IV in her arm, despite the bruise blooming on her wrist where someone had grabbed her. What's going on? These men, they said... I know what they said. Lena crossed to the bed, took her mother's hands carefully. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? I'm fine, confused, but fine. Rebecca looked past her daughter to where Nikolai stood in the doorway. Who's this? Mom, this is Nikolai. Lena's throat went tight. My husband. The silence stretched. Rebecca blinked once, twice. Your what? We got married this morning. You... Rebecca's mouth opened and closed. Lena Marie Hart, you've been gone 3 days. 3 days, and you come back married to a man I've never met with armed guards and people trying to kidnap me from my hospital bed. So I'm going to ask you one more time, and I want the truth. What is going on? Lena looked at Nikolai. He gave a small nod. Your choice, your mother, your truth. She sat on the edge of the bed and told her mother everything. The restaurant, Antonio, the phone call, Nikolai's protection and Sergei's threats. The marriage that was supposed to keep them safe, but had only painted a bigger target on their backs. Rebecca listened without interrupting, her face going through a dozen different emotions. When Lena finished, her mother was quiet for a long moment. So you married a criminal to protect me, she finally said. I married him to protect both of us. And you love him? Lena hesitated. Nikolai stood very still in the doorway, his expression unreadable. I don't know, Lena said honestly. Maybe. Eventually. Right now I just know he's the only person who's ever tried to keep me safe instead of using me up. Rebecca's eyes shifted to Nikolai. Come here. He approached slowly, wary. Rebecca might be sick, might be small, but there was steel in her voice that made even dangerous men listen. You're the one who paid my medical bills, Rebecca said. Got me moved to this room, set up the care. Yes, ma'am. Why? Because your daughter asked for help, and I was in a position to give it. Bullshit! Rebecca's voice was sharp. Men like you don't do favors without reason. So why? Nikolai looked at Lena, then back at her mother. Because I've spent 20 years taking things, building power on other people's backs, and when I met your daughter, I saw a chance to give something instead. Maybe that's selfish too. Maybe it's just another way of taking, but it's the truth. Rebecca studied him with eyes that had seen too much life to be fooled easily. You're going to hurt her. Men like you always do. Probably. And you married her anyway. Yes. Why? Because the alternative was watching her die. And I'm a selfish man, Mrs. Hart, but I'm not that selfish. Something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or just recognition of hard truths. Rebecca looked at her daughter. You're sure about this? No, Lena said. But I'm doing it anyway. Rebecca laughed, short and bitter. You're more like me than I wanted. Stubborn and stupid and too brave for your own good. She squeezed Lena's hand. Fine. You want to marry a gangster, that's your choice. But if he hurts you, then I'll hurt him back, Lena finished. Good girl. Rebecca looked at Nikolai again. And you? You keep her safe. Whatever it takes. You understand me? Yes, ma'am. Then get out, both of you. I'm tired, and this whole conversation is exhausting. Lena kissed her mother's forehead. We're moving you, somewhere safer. Nikolai's people will... I know. The nurse already explained. Rebecca's voice softened. I'll be fine, baby. You're the one I'm worried about. Don't be. I'm tougher than I look. I know. That's what scares me. Outside the room, Victor was waiting with news that made Nikolai's expression go dark. Sergei's called a meeting. Tonight, neutral ground. Says he wants to talk terms. It's a trap, Dmitri said. Of course it's a trap. Nikolai pulled out his phone, started typing. But we can't refuse without looking weak. How many men? He's bringing 5. We can match that. No. We bring 10. Let him see we're not playing games. Nikolai looked at Lena. You're staying at the estate. No arguments. I want to come. Absolutely not. Nikolai, this is not negotiable. His voice went hard. Sergei wants you dead or broken. I'm not giving him a chance at either. Lena wanted to fight, wanted to prove she wasn't some fragile thing that needed locking away. But she saw the fear beneath his anger, the way his hand trembled slightly when he touched her face. Fine, she said, but you come back. That's not negotiable either. He kissed her, quick and fierce. I always come back. The estate felt like a prison. Lena paced the bedroom while armed men patrolled outside. She'd tried to leave twice, been politely but firmly turned back. Tried to call Nikolai, got voicemail. Tried to distract herself with television, with food, with anything that would make the hours pass faster. Nothing worked. At 8 o'clock, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Hello? Mrs. Volkov. The voice was smooth, accented, familiar in a way that made her skin crawl. We haven't been properly introduced. I'm Sergei Kozlov. Lena's blood went cold. How did you get this number? Please. I've been in this business longer than you've been alive. Getting a phone number is child's play. A pause. I wanted to congratulate you on your marriage. Very sudden, very romantic. What do you want? To make you an offer. Woman to, well, I was going to say man to man, but that's not quite right, is it? He laughed, and it sounded like breaking glass. Here's the situation. Your husband and I are about to have a conversation. It may get unpleasant. People may get hurt, and I'd rather avoid all that mess. Then leave him alone. I would, if he'd be reasonable, but Nikolai has this unfortunate habit of thinking he's untouchable. You, however, you're new to this world. Still soft, still able to see clearly. Lena sat down slowly. What's your offer? You convince your husband to give me what I want. The territory, the roots, the respect. In exchange, I leave you both alive. You get to play house, he gets to keep breathing, everyone wins. And if I refuse, then tonight's meeting goes badly. Nikolai comes home in a box, and you become a very young widow, or... His voice dropped, went cold. You don't become a widow. You become mine. I take you, break you, use you to rebuild everything Nikolai destroyed. Either way, you lose. Rage burned through her fear. You think threatening me will make me betray him? I think you're smart enough to know when you're beaten. I think a week ago you were a waitress who could barely afford rent. And I think deep down, you know this fantasy can't last. So why not end it while you still can, while you're still alive to enjoy the aftermath? Go to hell. I'll see you there, Mrs. Volkov. Give my regards to your husband. What's left of him? The line went dead. Lena sat frozen, phone trembling in her hand. Every instinct screamed at her to call Nikolai, warn him, Do something. But what could she say? That Sergei had called to threaten her? He already knew Sergei was dangerous. That's why she was locked in this house like a princess in a tower. She looked at the ring on her finger. Heavy, expensive. A symbol of protection that felt more like a target. The door opened. One of the guards, young, dark-haired, nervous. Mrs. Volkov, is everything all right? We heard shouting. I'm fine. She stood, made a decision. I need to go to the meeting. Now. Ma'am, Mr. Volkov was very clear. I don't care what he said. Sergei just called me. He knows things he shouldn't. This whole thing is wrong, and I need to warn Nikolai before... Gunfire erupted outside. Not distant, close. Right outside the house. The guard's eyes went wide and he spun toward the hallway, hand going to his weapon. Stay here, he said. Then he was gone, door slamming behind him. More gunfire, shouting in Russian. Something heavy crashed downstairs. Lena backed away from the door, looking for anything she could use as a weapon. Found nothing. The room was beautiful and useless, designed for sleeping, not fighting. The window. She could... The glass exploded inward. Lena screamed and dropped, covering her head as shards rained down. Through the broken window, a rope dangled, and climbing through, dressed in black, face covered, was a man with a gun. He saw her, raised the weapon. Don't move. Lena bolted. She made it 3 steps before he caught her, arm around her waist, hand clamped over her mouth. She bit down hard, tasted blood, heard him curse in Russian. His grip loosened for half a second. She drove her elbow back into his ribs, broke free, ran for the door. It burst open. Another man in black, bigger, faster. He caught her by the throat, slammed her against the wall hard enough to make stars explode behind her eyes. Enough, he said in accented English. Mr. Kozlov wants you alive. Don't make this harder. Lena clawed at his hand, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The room started to go gray around the edges. Then the first man was there with a cloth, pressing it over her nose and mouth. Chemical smell, sweet and wrong. Sleep, he said. The world went dark. She woke up in pieces. First came sound, voices speaking Russian, too fast to follow. Then sensation, cold concrete beneath her, plastic zip ties cutting into her wrists. Finally sight, blurry and uncertain, slowly focusing on a room that looked like every nightmare. Warehouse. Empty except for a chair, a table, and 3 men watching her with dead eyes. Lena tried to move, found her ankles bound too. Panic spiked through her, sharp and chemical. She was tied up in a warehouse with men who wanted to hurt her, and nobody knew where she was, and Nikolai. Awake. Good. Sergei stepped into view, immaculate in a gray suit, smiling like they were old friends. I apologize for the rough treatment. My men can be enthusiastic. Where am I? Her voice came out hoarse. Somewhere your husband will never find you. Somewhere we can talk privately. He crouched in front of her. I gave you a chance, Mrs. Volkov. Asked nicely. You chose poorly. He'll kill you for this. Will he? I wonder. Sergei tilted his head. See, right now Nikolai is at our meeting, waiting for me, getting more and more anxious, and in about... He checked his watch. 15 minutes? He'll receive a video. Of you. Here. And he'll have to make a choice. What choice? His empire or his wife? Everything he's built? Or the woman he married 3 hours ago? Sergei's smile sharpened. What do you think he'll choose? Lena's throat went tight. You don't know him. I know men. I know power. And I know that no one gives up everything for someone they barely know, no matter how pretty she is. He stood, brushed off his knees. But we'll see. In the meantime, make yourself comfortable. We're going to be here a while. He walked away, and Lena was left alone with the guards. They didn't speak, didn't move, just watched her like she was a thing instead of a person. She tested the zip ties. Tight. Too tight to slip. Her wrists were already going numb. Think, she told herself. Think like someone who wants to live. The room had 2 exits, the door Sergei had used, and a roll-up loading bay door on the far wall. No windows, no weapons she could reach, nothing but concrete and shadows and men with guns. She was going to die here. No. She refused to accept that, refused to be the damsel who waited for rescue. She'd survived 26 years on her own before Nikolai. She could survive this. One of the guards' phones rang. He answered in Russian, listened, then looked at Lena with something like pity. "Boss wants the video," he said to his partner. "Set it up." They positioned her against the wall, angled a phone camera. Lena thought about fighting, about refusing to cooperate. But what would that accomplish? They'd just hurt her until she complied. And then Nikolai would see her broken instead of defiant. Better to let him see her alive, fighting, refusing to break. "Look at the camera," the guard said. Lena looked, lifted her chin, made sure her eyes showed anger instead of fear. "Tell your husband what Mr. Kozlov wants," the guard prompted. "No." His hand cracked across her face, hard enough to split her lip. Pain exploded through her jaw, and she tasted blood. "Tell him." Lena spat blood at the camera. "I'm not afraid of you, and neither is he. So do whatever you're going to do. It won't matter. You're already dead." The guard hit her again, and again, until her vision swam and her ears rang, and she couldn't remember why staying conscious mattered. "Enough," someone said. "We need her alive." The beating stopped. The camera clicked off, and Lena hung against the wall, breathing through broken ribs, tasting copper and defeat. "Send it," the guard said. 15 minutes later, all hell broke loose. It started with an explosion, not close, but close enough to shake the building. The guards jumped, weapons coming up, shouting into radios. Then gunfire. Real gunfire. Not the warning shots from the estate. Full automatic, close, and getting closer. The loading bay door screamed as something hit it from outside. Once. Twice. On the third hit, it buckled. The guards opened fire, bullets sparking off metal. The door gave way with a shriek of tortured steel, and through the smoke and chaos came Nikolai. He moved like violence given form, gun in each hand, firing with mechanical precision. The first guard went down with a bullet between his eyes. The second took one to the chest, dropped gurgling. The third tried to use Lena as a shield. Nikolai shot him through the hand. The gun clattered away. Then Nikolai was on him, and Lena looked away because what came next wasn't something she wanted to see. Silence. Heavy breathing. Then Nikolai was kneeling in front of her, blood on his face, hands shaking as he cut through her restraints. "Lena, look at me." She looked. His eyes were wild, desperate, searching her face for damage. "I'm okay," she whispered. "You're bleeding. Your face. I'm okay." He gathered her up like she weighed nothing, cradled her against his chest. She felt his heart hammering, felt the tremor in his arms. "I thought I lost you," he said into her hair. "I thought, I'm here. I'm alive. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have protected you better. Should have..." "Nikolai." She pulled back enough to see his face. "Where's Sergei?" His expression went cold. "Victor has him, outside." "I want to see." "Lena, you don't need to... I want to see." He studied her face, and whatever he saw there made him nod. He carried her out into the night, where Victor stood over a kneeling figure. Sergei looked smaller now, older. His suit was torn, his face bloody, and his eyes held the knowledge of a man who knew exactly how this ended. "Mrs. Volkov," he said when he saw her, "still alive. Impressive." Nikolai set her down carefully but kept one arm around her waist. She swayed, caught herself, straightened. "You were wrong," she said to Sergei. "About what?" "About what he'd choose. About what I'm worth." She looked at Nikolai. "Give me your gun." "Lena, give me your gun." He hesitated, then placed it in her hand. It was heavier than she expected, still warm from firing. She raised it, pointed it at Sergei's head. Her hands didn't shake. "You said no one gives up everything for someone they barely know," she said. "But he did. He left the meeting, abandoned his position, walked into your trap. For me. And you know what that means?" Sergei said nothing. "It means I'm not a weakness. I'm a promise. A line you don't cross. And now you're going to die knowing you were wrong about everything." "Are you?" Sergei smiled through blood. "Are you really going to pull that trigger, waitress? Because killing someone isn't like the movies. It changes you, breaks something inside that never heals." "I know." "Then don't. Let Nikolai do it. Keep your hands clean. Stay the innocent girl who stumbled into this life." Lena thought about Antonio's hands on her arm. about working herself to exhaustion for people who never saw her, about being invisible and powerless and afraid every single day of her life. "I was never innocent," she said, and pulled the trigger. The gun kicked in her hand, Sergei dropped, and Lena stood there, ears ringing, looking at what she'd done. She'd killed a man, taken a life, crossed a line she could never uncross. Nikolai's hand covered hers, gently removing the gun. "It's done. You're done." "I don't feel different." Her voice sounded strange, distant. "Shouldn't I feel different?" "You will. Later. When the adrenaline fades." He turned her away from the body. "But right now we need to move. His men will regroup. This isn't over." "It has to be over. He's dead." "Sergei is dead. His organization isn't. We bought ourselves time, but then we use it." Lena looked at him. "You said marrying me would make me untouchable. So make it true. Make me so important, so visible, that killing me would cost more than anyone's willing to pay." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You want to go public. I want everyone to know who I am, who we are. I want to be so far from invisible that I become bulletproof." Victor approached, wiping blood off his hands. "Boss, we need to sanitize this scene and get moving. Give me 10 minutes. Nikolai pulled out his phone, started making calls. "Alexei, I need a venue. Tonight. Big enough for everyone who matters. And I need the word spread. I'm making an announcement about my wife. Anyone who wants to stay in my good graces will be there." He hung up and looked at Lena. "You're sure about this? Once we do this, there's no going back to quiet. You'll be a target forever." "I'm already a target. At least this way I choose how visible I am." His smile was proud and terrible. "Then let's give them a show they'll never forget." The penthouse suite looked like something out of a dream Lena had never dared to have. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering city. Crystal chandeliers threw prismatic light across marble floors. Women in designer dresses moved through the space with practiced elegance, their laughter like wind chimes. Lena stood in the bathroom, staring at herself in the mirror. Her face was a mess. Split lip, bruises blooming purple along her jaw, one eye swollen half shut. Blood had dried in her hair. She looked like she'd been in a war. She had been. The door opened. A woman entered, early 40s, sleek and professional, carrying what looked like a tackle box of cosmetics. "Mrs. Volkov, I'm Marina. Mr. Volkov sent me to help you get ready." "I don't think makeup is going to fix this." Marina set down her kit and studied Lena's face with clinical efficiency. "I've worked with worse, battered wives, abuse victims, women who needed to look presentable after their husbands." She stopped. "I can make you beautiful. The question is, do you want beautiful, or do you want them to see what was done to you?" Lena looked at her reflection, thought about Sergei's blood on her hands, about the gun's weight, about choosing visibility over safety. "I want them to see," she said. Marina nodded slowly. "Then we'll clean you up, but we won't hide the damage. Let them see what it costs to come at you. Let them see you survived anyway." 20 minutes later, Lena's wounds were cleaned and treated, her hair washed and styled to fall over one shoulder. Marina had applied minimal makeup, just enough to keep her from looking dead, not enough to hide the violence written across her face. The dress Nikolai had sent was black silk, simple and elegant, with long sleeves to hide the rope burns on her wrists. But when she moved, the fabric caught light like water, and she looked expensive, dangerous, like someone who belonged in this world of blood and money. "Perfect," Marina said quietly. "You look like a queen who's been to war." "I feel like a waitress playing dress-up." "Then fake it until it's real. That's what we all do." There was a knock. Dmitri's voice came through the door. "Mrs. Volkov, we're ready." Lena took a breath that didn't quite steady her. "What happens if I walk out there and fall apart?" Marina handed her a small clutch purse. "Then you fall apart, but you do it standing up with your head high, and you make them respect the pieces." The ballroom was packed. Lena walked in on Nikolai's arm and felt every eye in the room turn toward her. Conversations died mid-sentence. Glasses paused halfway to mouths. The crowd parted like water as they moved through it, and Lena felt the weight of their stares like hands on her skin. They saw the bruises, saw the split lip, saw exactly what had been done to her and how recently. "Steady," Nikolai murmured. His hand was warm on her waist, anchoring. "You're doing perfect." "I'm terrified." "I know. Don't let them see it." They reached the raised platform at the front of the room. Nikolai helped her up the steps, and suddenly she was above the crowd, visible to everyone, exposed in ways that made her want to run. Nikolai raised a hand. Silence fell like a blade. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "I know this is unusual, but recent events have made it necessary to clarify certain things, to make statements that can't be misunderstood." He turned to Lena, and his expression softened in a way that looked almost real. "This is my wife, Lena Volkov. Some of you already know what happened tonight. For those who don't, Sergei Kozlov attempted to use her against me, to leverage her as weakness, to prove that caring about someone makes you vulnerable." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Nikolai's voice hardened. "He was wrong, and he's dead because of it." The room went silent again. Lena felt the temperature shift, felt everyone recalculating. "My wife is not a weakness," Nikolai continued. "She is a promise, a line that cannot be crossed. Anyone who threatens her, touches her, or even looks at her wrong will answer to me personally, and I promise you." His smile was cold enough to freeze blood. "My answer will be permanent." He looked out at the crowd, making eye contact with specific people. Lena recognized some of them from the warehouse meeting. Others were strangers, but they all wore the same expression, respect mixed with fear. Sergei thought he could break her, thought he could use her to break me. Nikolai's hand found Lena's, held it up so everyone could see the ring on her finger. Instead, she put a bullet in his head. "My wife is not some fragile thing to be protected. She's my partner, my equal. And anyone who forgets that won't live long enough to regret it." The crowd erupted in applause. Not warm, not welcoming, but acknowledging. The sound of people accepting a new reality because refusing it would cost too much. Lena stood there, Nikolai's hand in hers, looking out at faces that belonged to criminals and killers and people who trafficked in human misery. These were her people now, her world. She should hate it. Should hate him for dragging her into it. But when Nikolai looked at her, when his thumb brushed across her bruised knuckles, when he smiled at her like she was the most dangerous thing in the room, she felt something fierce and terrible bloom in her chest. Not love, not yet, but the seed of it, the possibility. After the announcement, people approached in waves. They congratulated her with cold eyes and calculating smiles. They shook her hand carefully, like she might bite. They asked questions that weren't really questions, probing for weakness, testing her resolve. Lena smiled through the split in her lip and gave them nothing. A woman in diamonds and ice approached, early 50s, beautiful in a hard way. "Mrs. Volkov, I'm Katerina Sokolov. My late husband did business with Nikolai." Late husband. He made the mistake of thinking Nikolai could be reasoned with. Turns out, he can't. Katerina's smile was sharp. "I hope you have better luck." "I'm not trying to reason with him. I'm trying to survive him." "Smart girl." Katerina leaned closer. "Word of advice. The men in this world, they'll test you. Push boundaries. See if you're really as dangerous as Nikolai claims. Don't let them. The second you show weakness, you're done." "What if I don't know how to be dangerous?" "Then learn fast or die slow. Those are your options." She walked away, leaving Lena cold despite the warmth of the room. More people came. More tests disguised as pleasantries. An older man asked about her family, fishing for leverage points. A younger one complimented her dress while staring at her bruises like they were fascinating. A woman her own age looked her up and down and laughed. "Nikolai always did have interesting taste," the woman said, "though usually his type lasts longer than a week." Lena felt Nikolai tense beside her. His hand moved toward the woman, threat implicit in the motion. "It's fine," Lena said quietly. Then louder to the woman, "You're right. I probably won't last. Most people don't survive marrying into this life. But at least when I go down, it'll be fighting. What's your excuse for still breathing?" The woman's smile froze. Around them, people who'd been listening tried not to laugh. "Excuse me? You heard me. You're standing here, safe and comfortable, throwing shade at someone who got kidnapped and beaten tonight. Which means either you're stupid enough to think that makes you tough, or you're jealous that someone else got the attention. Either way, it's pathetic." The woman's face went red. She opened her mouth, closed it, then turned and stalked away. Nikolai's hand squeezed Lena's waist. "That was Irina Volkov, my cousin." Oh, Lena's stomach dropped. Should I apologize? Hell no, she's been insufferable for years. That was perfect. He leaned down, whispered against her ear. You're a natural at this. At what? Being mean? At survival. The night wore on. Lena's face hurt, her ribs ached, and the heels Marina had given her were slowly destroying her feet. But she stayed upright, stayed present, stayed visible. Because that was the point. Not to hide, not to be protected, but to be seen, to be known. To become so real to these people that killing her would feel personal instead of strategic. Around midnight, Alexei approached. The gray-haired man who'd questioned Nikolai's judgment earlier. He looked at Lena with new respect. Mrs. Volkov, I owe you an apology. I questioned whether you were worth the trouble. Tonight proved me wrong. Tonight proved I can bleed and stay standing. That's not the same thing. In this world, it's exactly the same thing. He raised his glass. To survival. Lena clinked her glass against his, drank champagne that tasted like metal and regret, and tried not to think about the body she'd left in the warehouse. The drive back to the estate was quiet. Lena sat pressed against Nikolai's side, watching the city lights blur past. The adrenaline had finally worn off, leaving her hollow and shaking. You did good tonight, Nikolai said softly. I killed someone. I know. I should feel worse about it, shouldn't I? I should be falling apart. He was quiet for a moment. The guilt comes later. Right now, your brain is still in survival mode, keeping you functional. But eventually, it'll hit, and when it does, I'll deal with it. Lena, I mean it. I chose this. I pulled the trigger. I don't get to fall apart now and pretend I'm some victim. I made a choice, and I have to live with it. Nikolai turned her face toward him. His eyes were sad and knowing in the dim light. You can be strong and still break sometimes. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. They are in your world. Our world now. The words settled between them, heavy with meaning. Our world. Not his, not theirs. Ours. Lena leaned her head against his shoulder. I'm so tired. I know. And scared. I know that too. But I'm not leaving. I'm not running. She struggled for words. This is mine now. This life, this choice, you. It's mine, and I'm keeping it. His arm tightened around her. Even knowing what it costs? Especially knowing what it costs. They pulled through the estate gates. Home, such as it was. Lena looked at the house and tried to feel something other than exhaustion. Inside, Marina waited with medical supplies. She cleaned Lena's wounds properly this time, applied butterfly bandages to the split lip, gave her ice for the swelling. You should rest, Marina said. Your body's been through trauma. It needs time to heal. What about my head? Does that get time too? Marina's smile was sad. The head never heals. You just get better at living with the damage. After she left, Lena sat on the edge of the enormous bed in her enormous bedroom, still wearing the black dress, and tried to process everything that had happened in one impossible day. She'd woken up a new bride, been threatened by her husband's enemy, watched her mother almost get kidnapped, got kidnapped herself, been beaten, killed a man, made a public declaration of power, and now she was supposed to just, what, go to sleep? Wake up tomorrow and do it again? There was a knock. Nikolai, still in his suit, looking as exhausted as she felt. Can I come in? She nodded. He sat beside her, careful to leave space between them. I wanted to check on you. I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. Despite everything, Lena almost smiled. Yeah, I am. They sat in silence for a while. Then Nikolai spoke, his voice rough with something that might have been guilt. I should have protected you better. Should have seen Sergei's move coming. Should have... To stop. Lena cut him off. You can't protect me from everything. This world doesn't work that way. You said it yourself. I have to be strong enough to survive on my own. You shouldn't have to. But I do. So teach me. She looked at him. Teach me how to be dangerous, how to see threats coming, how to fight back. Don't just lock me away and hope nothing gets through. Make me someone who doesn't need locking away. He studied her face, and something shifted in his expression. Pride, maybe, or recognition. You really mean that? Every word. It won't be easy. Learning to live in this world, to think like we do, it changes you, makes you harder, colder. Good. I'm tired of being soft. Nikolai reached out slowly, cupped her bruised face with a gentleness that contradicted everything else about him. What if I don't want you to change? What if the soft parts are what I... He stopped, shook his head. Never mind. What? Nothing. I'm just... He stood abruptly. You should sleep. Tomorrow we start making sure this never happens again. He was halfway to the door when Lena spoke. Stay. He froze. What? Stay with me. Tonight. I don't... She swallowed hard. I don't want to be alone. The vulnerability in her voice seemed to undo something in him. He came back slowly, sat on the bed, pulled off his jacket. Neither of them spoke as they lay down, still mostly dressed, on opposite sides of the mattress. But sometime in the night, Lena's nightmares came. She woke gasping, reliving the warehouse, Sergei's smile, the gun's weight in her hand. And Nikolai was there, pulling her close, whispering Russian words she didn't understand, but that sounded like comfort anyway. She cried then, finally, all the fear and rage and grief pouring out against his chest while he held her and didn't tell her to stop. I killed him, she sobbed. I looked him in the eye and killed him. I know. I'm not sorry. I know that too. Does that make me a monster? Nikolai pulled back enough to see her face. It makes you a survivor, and in this world that's the same thing. She fell asleep in his arms, and this time the nightmares stayed away. Morning came with pale light and the smell of coffee. Lena woke alone, the space beside her cold. For a moment, she thought maybe she'd dreamed it all, the comfort, the crying, the way Nikolai had held her like she was something precious. Then she saw the note on the pillow. Meetings all morning. Dmitri is outside your door. Don't leave the estate without him. We'll talk tonight. N. She got up, wincing at the pain in her ribs. The bruises had darkened overnight, purple and yellow spreading across her skin like paint. She looked like hell. Good. Let them see it. She showered, dressed in clothes that weren't hers but fit anyway. Nikolai's people were disturbingly efficient. Jeans and a soft sweater, comfortable and unremarkable. The opposite of last night's armor. Dmitri was indeed outside, reading something on his phone. He looked up when she emerged. Mrs. Volkov, sleep well? Not really. Is there food? Kitchen's stocked. I'll walk with you. They moved through the house together, Dmitri maintaining a careful distance. Protective but not intrusive. Lena wondered what he'd been told, what he knew about last night. In the kitchen, she found fresh pastries, fruit, coffee that actually tasted good. She ate mechanically, trying to figure out what came next. Can I ask you something? She said to Dmitri. Of course. How long have you worked for Nikolai? 15 years, since we were both much younger and much stupider. And in all that time, has he ever... She struggled for words. Has he ever cared about someone the way he claims to care about me? Dmitri was quiet for a long moment. No, he said finally. Never. We all thought he was incapable of it. Thought something in him was just broken. Too much violence, too young. But then you showed up and suddenly he's taking calls at midnight, paying hospital bills, starting wars over bruises. He looked at her directly. So whatever this is between you two, it's real. At least for him. And for me? That's something only you can answer. Before Lena could respond, Victor appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. Mrs. Volkov, we have a situation. Her stomach dropped. What kind of situation? Sergei's lieutenants. They're demanding a meeting. They want to discuss terms for his organization's surrender. That's good, right? Normally, yes. But they're insisting you be present. They want to see the woman who killed their boss. They want... He paused. They want to measure you. Lena set down her coffee. When? This afternoon. Neutral location. Nikolai's already agreed, but he wants your consent before... I'll go. Mrs. Volkov, these are dangerous men. They might try to I don't care what they might try. If they want to see me, they can see me. She stood. What time? Victor exchanged a glance with Dmitri. 3 o'clock. But Nikolai will brief you first. There are protocols, expectations, then I'll learn them. What else do I need to know? For the next 4 hours, Lena received a crash course in criminal diplomacy. Victor explained power structures, territory disputes, the unwritten rules that kept the city's underworld from descending into total chaos. Dmitri taught her how to read threats, spot weapons, identify exits. A woman named Sonia, one of Nikolai's few female lieutenants, showed her how to dress for intimidation instead of seduction. "These men will look for weakness," Sonia said, adjusting Lena's collar. "They'll test you with words, with looks, with casual threats disguised as compliments. Your job is to give them nothing. What if they push too hard? Then you push back harder, show teeth, make them regret the test." Sonia stepped back, examined her work. "You look good, strong, like someone who could kill a man and sleep soundly after." "I didn't sleep soundly." "They don't need to know that." At 2:30, Nikolai returned. He looked tired, stressed, but his eyes softened when he saw her. "You ready for this?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." He crossed to her, touched her face gently. "You don't have to prove anything to these people." "Yes, I do. You said it yourself. I need to be untouchable. This is part of that. And if they try something, then you handle it. That's your job, right? The monster who protects me?" His smile was brief and sharp. "Something like that." They took 3 vehicles to the meeting. Lena rode with Nikolai, watching the city pass by and trying to keep her breathing steady. "Tell me about them," she said. "Sergei's people. Who am I dealing with?" 3 main lieutenants, Boris Kuznetsov, muscle, not much brain, loyal to whoever's strongest. Yuri Markov, smart, ambitious, probably already planning how to take over. And Elena Volkov, my aunt, actually. She married into Sergei's organization 20 years ago. "Your aunt works for the man who tried to kill me?" "Worked. Past tense. And family doesn't mean much in this world. She chose her side a long time ago." He looked at her. "She'll be the most dangerous. She knows how our family thinks, how we operate, and she's never forgiven me for what I did to her son." "What did you do?" "Killed him. He was dealing in things even I won't touch. Children. So I put a bullet in his head and told her if she wanted revenge, she could try for it." Lena's blood went cold. "And she didn't?" "She's smart enough to know she'd lose, but that doesn't mean she's forgiven it. So watch her. She'll come at you sideways if she comes at all." The meeting was in a restaurant, closed for the afternoon, empty except for their people and Sergei's. Lena walked in flanked by Nikolai and Dmitri, feeling every eye track her movement. The 3 lieutenants sat at a round table in the center of the room. Boris was exactly as described, big, scarred, watching her like a predator, watching prey. Yuri was younger, sharper, his eyes calculating. And Elena looked like Nikolai. Same pale eyes, same sharp features, but worn down by years and grief. She smiled when Lena approached. "So this is the famous Lena Volkov, the waitress who killed Sergei Kozlov." Elena's voice was cultured, amused. "You don't look like much." "Neither did he. Didn't stop him from dying." The smile widened. "I like her, Nikolai. Much better than your usual type." "We're not here to discuss my type." Nikolai pulled out a chair for Lena, sat beside her. "You wanted a meeting. Here we are." Boris leaned forward. "We want assurances. Sergei's territory, his people. We need guarantees they won't be hunted down. That depends on whether they swear loyalty or try for revenge. And if they choose revenge, then I kill them. Simple as that." Yuri spoke up, his voice smooth. "And what about Sergei's personal holdings? His accounts, his properties, all of it comes to me. Standard protocol when a boss dies. You know this, Yuri. Even though your wife pulled the trigger?" The room went silent. Lena felt the weight of the question, the implication that she'd killed for Nikolai's benefit, that she was just a tool he'd used. Before Nikolai could respond, Lena spoke. "I didn't kill Sergei for territory or money. I killed him because he kidnapped me, beat me, and threatened everything I care about. The fact that Nikolai benefits is just a bonus." "But you're his wife," Yuri pressed. "Everything you do benefits him. How do we know this wasn't planned? How do we know you're not just his trained attack dog?" Lena stood slowly, walked around the table until she was directly in front of Yuri. He tensed, hand moving toward his waistband. "If I was his trained dog," Lena said quietly, "I wouldn't have married him. I would have just done the job and moved on. But I married him because I chose to. Because for the first time in my life, someone saw me as more than a tool or a victim. So if you think I'm going to sit here and let you reduce me to some weapon he picked up and pointed, she leaned closer. You're wrong. And if you try it again, you'll learn exactly how dangerous I can be without anyone's permission. Yuri stared at her. Then slowly he smiled. Message received, Mrs. Volkov. She returned to her seat. Nikolai's hand found her knee under the table, squeezed once. Pride and warning mixed together. Elena watched the exchange with interest. You've got spirit, I'll give you that. But spirit doesn't keep you alive in this world. Strategy does. Intelligence, knowing when to fight and when to fold. Is that what you did? Folded? I survived. Which is more than most people can say. Elena's eyes went cold. You killed the man I worked for. The man who gave me protection after Nikolai murdered my son. So tell me, girl, why shouldn't I put a bullet in you right now? Eye for an eye? The room tensed. Guns appeared. Nikolai's men, Sergei's men, everyone suddenly armed. Lena didn't flinch. Because your son was a monster who hurt children, and Sergei was a monster who tried to use me as leverage. So if you want revenge for monsters, go ahead, shoot me. But know that it won't bring them back, won't change what they did, and won't save you from what comes after. Elena's hand moved toward her purse. Nikolai's gun came up, pressed against her temple before she could blink. Try it, he said softly. Please. Time stretched. Elena's eyes flickered from Lena to Nikolai to the gun at her head. Then she laughed, a brittle, broken sound. You really would kill me, your own aunt, for her. Without hesitation. Then Sergei was right. She is your weakness. No, Nikolai pulled back the hammer. She's my strength. And if you can't see the difference, you're already dead. Boris cleared his throat. Enough. We didn't come here for bloodshed. We came to negotiate terms. The tension broke slowly. Guns disappeared. Elena's hand came away from her purse empty, and Lena breathed again, wondering how close they'd all just come to dying. The actual negotiations were almost anticlimactic after that. Territory was divided, accounts transferred, personnel reassigned. Sergei's organization would be absorbed into Nikolai's, with the 3 lieutenants keeping their positions under new management. And through it all, Lena sat silent, watching, learning, seeing how power moved, how threats were made and withdrawn, how the whole ugly system worked. By the time they left, the sun was setting. Lena felt hollowed out, exhausted in ways that had nothing to do with her physical injuries. In the car, Nikolai was quiet. Finally, he spoke. You scared me today. When? When you stood up to Yuri, when you challenged Elena, when you refused to back down even with guns pointed at your head. He looked at her. You're not supposed to be this fearless. You're supposed to let me handle it. I thought you wanted me to be strong. I do. But I also want you alive, and sometimes those things don't go together. Lena leaned back against the seat. Too late now. I've already shown them what I am. Can't take it back. And what are you? Really? She thought about the question, about who she'd been a week ago versus who she was becoming, about killing Sergei and facing down his lieutenants and standing beside Nikolai like she belonged there. I'm your wife, she said finally, for better or worse. That's what I am now. His hand found hers in the darkness. For better or worse. They drove home through the city lights, and Lena watched her reflection in the window, bruised, tired, changed in ways she was still learning to understand. She'd killed a man yesterday, threatened others today, stepped fully into a world of violence and power and impossible choices. And tomorrow she'd wake up and do it all again. Because that's what survival looked like in Nikolai Volkov's world. And it was her world now, too. 3 months later, Lena stood in front of a floor-to-ceiling mirror in a bedroom that still didn't quite feel like hers and barely recognized the woman staring back. The bruises were long gone. Her face had healed, leaving only the faintest scar at the corner of her lip, a thin white line she touched sometimes when she needed to remember who she'd been. The woman in the mirror wore a tailored charcoal suit that cost more than a month's rent at her old apartment. Her hair fell in dark waves over one shoulder, professional but not severe. She looked powerful, untouchable. She looked like Nikolai Volkov's wife. You ready? Sonia's voice came from the doorway. The car's waiting. Almost. Lena adjusted her collar, checked her reflection one more time. Do I look like someone who runs a foundation? You look like someone who could run the world if she wanted to. Sonia crossed the room, handed her a leather portfolio. The board meeting starts at 10. Victor says the old guard is going to push back on your proposals. They think you're too new, too young, too much of a former waitress? I was going to say inexperienced, but yeah, that too. Sonia's smile was sharp. Show them what experience really means. You've survived things they can't even imagine. The foundation had been Lena's idea, a way to funnel some of Nikolai's money into something that wasn't violence and territory disputes. Scholarships for kids from bad neighborhoods, medical care for people who couldn't afford it, housing assistance, small things that wouldn't change the world but might change a few lives. Nikolai had approved the idea with a raised eyebrow and a comment about her corrupting him into respectability. But the money had appeared, the lawyers had filed the paperwork, and now Lena spent her mornings in board meetings instead of serving coffee to people who didn't see her. Funny how things changed. The drive into the city was familiar now. Lena watched the streets roll past, neighborhoods she used to work in, buildings she used to walk by invisible and ignored. Now people recognized the car, stepped back, showed respect that had nothing to do with who she was, and everything to do with whose ring she wore. She still wasn't sure how she felt about that. The foundation offices occupied the 10th floor of a building Nikolai owned. Clean, modern, full of people who managed donations and wrote grants, and pretended very hard not to know where the money actually came from. Lena walked through the glass doors and felt every eye track her movement. Mrs. Volkov. The receptionist, Amy, young and nervous, stood quickly. The board is assembled in conference room A. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? I'm fine, thank you. Lena softened her voice deliberately. The girl was scared of her. They all were. How's your sister doing? The one applying to nursing school? Amy blinked, surprised. She got in, started last month. Thank you for asking. That's wonderful. Tell her congratulations from me. It was a small thing. Remembering names, asking questions, treating people like they mattered. But Lena had spent too many years being invisible to inflict that on anyone else. Even if they were scared of her, they deserved to be seen. The boardroom was all glass and steel. 12 people seated around a massive table. Most were in their 50s and 60s. Wealthy philanthropists who'd agreed to lend their names to the foundation in exchange for tax benefits and social standing. They looked up when Lena entered, expressions ranging from polite to openly skeptical. Mrs. Volkov! The chairman, Gregory Barnes, old money and older attitudes, gestured to the empty seat at the head of the table. We were just discussing your proposal for the South Side Initiative. Lena sat, opened her portfolio, met his eyes without flinching. And we have concerns. The budget is quite aggressive. The target demographic is, how do I put this delicately, high risk. The return on investment is questionable at best. Return on investment. Lena repeated the words slowly. Mr. Barnes, we're talking about feeding families who can't afford groceries. This isn't a business deal. Everything is a business deal, my dear. Even charity requires sound financial planning. Don't call me my dear. The words came out flat and cold. And don't pretend this is about financial planning. You're uncomfortable funding programs in poor neighborhoods because you think poor people don't deserve help. You'd rather we focus on art museums and university endowments, things that make you look cultured at cocktail parties. Barnes's face reddened. That's not... It is exactly what you mean. I've read your counterproposal. Ballet scholarships for kids who already attend private schools. A new wing at the museum downtown. All very respectable, very safe, and completely useless to people who are actually struggling. A woman down the table, Patricia something, tech money, cleared her throat. Mrs. Volkov, we understand you have personal feelings about these communities. But as board members, we have a fiduciary responsibility. Mogdi, I have personal experience with these communities, Lena interrupted. I grew up in them, worked in them, watched my mother get sick because she couldn't afford decent health care. So yes, I have feelings. But I also have perspective you all lack. I know exactly where this money needs to go because I've lived what you're all afraid of. The room went silent. Lena could feel them recalculating, reassessing. She wasn't just Nikolai Volkov's wife. She was a reminder that poverty was real, that suffering existed outside their clean neighborhoods and expensive cars. The Southside Initiative is happening, she continued, with or without your approval. I have full authorization from my husband to allocate foundation funds as I see fit. But I came to this meeting as a courtesy, to include you in the process. If you'd rather not be included, if you'd rather resign and let me find board members who actually care about helping people instead of protecting their tax brackets, then say so now. Barnes stood abruptly. This is outrageous. I've been in philanthropy for 30 years. And in 30 years, what have you actually accomplished? How many lives have you changed? Or have you just moved money around to make yourself feel important? His mouth opened and closed. Then he grabbed his briefcase and walked out, slamming the door behind him. The remaining board members looked at each other nervously. Patricia spoke first. Mrs. Volkov, you have to understand. Gregory has connections, influence. Making an enemy of him could hurt the foundation's reputation. Our reputation is built on my husband's money and my husband's name. Gregory Barnes has neither. Lena looked around the table. Anyone else want to leave? Now's your chance. Nobody moved. Good. Then let's vote on the Southside Initiative. All in favor? 10 hands went up. Slowly, reluctantly, but they went up. Motion passes. We'll break ground next month. Lena closed her portfolio. Meeting adjourned. She left the boardroom feeling electric. It wasn't the same as pulling a trigger or facing down Sergei's lieutenants, but it was power all the same. The ability to make things happen, to force change, to take money built on blood and turn it into something good. Maybe that didn't erase where the money came from. Maybe it didn't make Nikolai's empire any cleaner. But it was something, and something was better than nothing. Her phone buzzed, a text from Nikolai. How did it go? She typed back, made an enemy, passed the initiative, normal Tuesday. His response came immediately. That's my girl. Lunch at home? I have something to show you. Be there in 20. The estate looked different in daylight. Less like a fortress, more like a home. Lena had spent the last 3 months slowly making changes. Flowers in the garden, art on the walls that didn't look like it came from a catalog. Small touches that made the space feel lived in instead of staged. Nikolai met her at the door, still in his suit from whatever meeting he'd been in, and kissed her like he hadn't seen her in days instead of hours. You're in a good mood, she said against his mouth. I'm always in a good mood when you successfully terrorize old men. He pulled back, grinned. Dmitri heard about Barnes storming out. Said you eviscerated him. He deserved it. Agreed. Come on, I want to show you something. He led her upstairs to a room she'd never paid much attention to, one of the spare bedrooms at the far end of the hall. But when he opened the door, it wasn't a bedroom anymore. It was an office. Her office. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk by the windows, comfortable chairs, and most importantly, photos on the wall. Her mother, smiling in her new care facility. Lena herself at the foundation opening. Even an old picture from the restaurant. Lena in her uniform, looking tired and invisible. I thought you needed a space, Nikolai said quietly. Somewhere that's yours. Not the foundation, not my world, just yours. Lena walked around the room, touching things with careful fingers. When did you do this? Been working on it for a few weeks. Wanted to surprise you. It's perfect. She turned to face him. Thank you. He shrugged, trying for casual and missing. You've been working yourself to death between the foundation and everything else. Figured you needed somewhere to breathe. Everything else. He meant the other parts of her new life, the meetings with Nikolai's people, the occasional enforcement action she attended to show she wasn't just a figurehead, the delicate balance of being powerful enough to be respected, but not so dangerous that she became a target. It was exhausting. Some days Lena missed the simplicity of her old life, the clear boundaries between work and home, the absence of guns and threats and choices that carried life or death weight. But most days she didn't. Most days she felt more alive than she ever had serving coffee to people who didn't see her. I love it, she said. I love... The words caught in her throat. Nikolai went very still. What? Nothing. I'm just... Thank you for this, for everything. He crossed to her, took her hands. You were going to say something else. No, I wasn't. Lena. She met his eyes. 3 months of marriage. 3 months of learning each other, fighting together, building something that looked almost like a real relationship. 3 months of falling without admitting it. I love you, she said quietly. I wasn't going to say it yet. Wasn't sure if I meant it, or if I was just grateful or confused, but I do. Love you. Somehow. The silence stretched between them. Nikolai's expression went through a dozen emotions too fast to track. You don't have to say it back, Lena added quickly. I know we didn't start this for the right reasons, and you don't owe me. He kissed her. Hard and desperate and achingly gentle all at once. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. I've loved you since the night you spilled ice at my feet and looked at me like I was just a man, he said. I've loved you through every stupid, dangerous, impossible thing that's happened since. And I was waiting for you to catch up because I knew. I knew if I said it first, you'd think it was just possession, just me being selfish. It is you being selfish. Yeah, but it's also real. He pulled back, cupped her face. I love you, Lena Volkov, and that terrifies me more than anything else in this world. Good, she whispered. We should both be terrified. They stood there in her new office, holding each other like the world might end if they let go. And maybe it would. Their whole relationship was built on violence and survival and choices made under duress. It shouldn't work, shouldn't last. But it did. And maybe that was enough. Later, they had lunch on the terrace overlooking the gardens. Lena picked at her food while Nikolai told her about his morning, meetings with city officials who wanted favors, shipments that needed securing, the endless machinery of his empire. You look tired, she said. So do you. I ran a board meeting. You ran half the city's underworld. Not exactly equivalent. He smiled. Your meeting sounds more dangerous. At least my people expect violence. Your board members probably thought philanthropy was all ribbon cutting and tax deductions. They did. Now they know better. Lena set down her fork. Can I ask you something? Always. Do you ever think about getting out? Just walking away from all of this? Nikolai was quiet for a long moment. Every day. The admission surprised her. Really? Really? I think about what it would be like to be normal, to not look over my shoulder constantly, to build something that isn't based on fear. He looked at her. But then I remember that getting out isn't just about me anymore. It's about everyone who depends on me. The people I protect, the deals I've made, the balance I maintain. If I walk away, someone else takes over, and whoever that is might not care about keeping collateral damage low. So you're trapped. We're all trapped. The question is whether the cage we choose is better than the alternatives. Lena thought about that, about her old life, the poverty, the invisibility, the slow grinding down of spirit that came from never mattering to anyone. That had been a cage too. Maybe not as dangerous as this one, but no less confining. What if we found a middle ground, she said slowly. What if you started transitioning out, moving assets into legitimate businesses, stepping back from the violent stuff, letting other people take over? You want me to go straight? I want you to be able to sleep without a gun under your pillow. I want us to have a life that isn't constantly under threat. Is that so impossible? Nikolai studied her face. It would take years, maybe decades. And it would mean showing weakness, which in this world gets you killed. I know. Lena reached across the table, took his hand. But maybe it's worth the risk. Maybe building something real is worth more than holding territory and scaring people. You've changed me, he said softly. Made me want things I thought I'd given up on. Like hope. Like futures. So let's build one. Together. It doesn't have to be perfect or safe. It just has to be ours. He brought her hand to his lips, kissed her bruised knuckles, still marked from the time she'd punched a wall during an argument last week. Okay. Okay? Okay, we'll try. Start moving things, setting up transitions. It won't be fast, and it won't be easy, but... He smiled. But you're right. Building something real is worth the risk. Lena felt something loosen in her chest. Hope, maybe, or just the possibility of it. The next 2 months were chaos. Nikolai started the slow process of legitimizing his empire. Shell companies became real businesses. Illegal operations got phased out or handed off to people willing to take the heat. Territory got redistributed, power got balanced. And through it all, Lena watched her husband try to become someone new while still being who he'd always been. It wasn't smooth. There were fights, loud, bitter arguments about how fast to move, how much to risk, whether any of this was even possible. There were setbacks, deals that fell through, people who refused to accept the changes, moments when everything seemed ready to collapse. But there were also victories. The foundation broke ground on the South Side project. Lena's mother moved into a care facility so nice it made her cry. Nikolai smiled more, laughed more, looked less like a man expecting assassination at any moment. And then Elena Volkov came back. The call came on a Tuesday evening. Lena was in her office, reviewing grant proposals, when Dmitri appeared in the doorway looking grim. "We have a problem." Lena's stomach dropped. "What kind?" "Elena. She's asked for a meeting. Says she has information about people planning to move against Nikolai during the transition. Says she wants to help." "Since when does Elena want to help us?" "Since never, which is why this is a problem." Nikolai was in his study, surrounded by paperwork, looking exhausted. He glanced up when Lena entered. "You heard?" "Yeah, what do you think she wants?" "Revenge, leverage, a way back into power now that Sergei's gone." He rubbed his face. "Or maybe she's telling the truth, and there really is a threat. Hard to tell with her." "So we meet with her." "Absolutely not. It's too dangerous." "Nikolai, I said no." His voice hardened. "Elena has wanted me dead for years. I'm not giving her a chance to finish the job." "Then send Victor or Dmitri, but we need to know what she knows." He was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded, pulled out his phone. "Victor, set up a meeting with Elena, neutral ground, full security, and make it clear, she tries anything, even breathes wrong, and she doesn't leave alive." The meeting was set for 2 days later. In those 2 days, Lena barely slept. She kept thinking about Elena's cold eyes, her careful words, the way she'd almost pulled a gun at their last meeting. What if this was a trap? What if Nikolai walked into that restaurant and never walked out? "Stop catastrophizing," Sonia said when she found Lena pacing the bedroom at 3 a.m. "Nikolai's been doing this for 20 years. He knows how to handle Elena. That doesn't mean he's invincible. No, but it means he's smart enough to see threats coming." Sonia sat on the edge of the bed. "You love him." It wasn't a question. Lena nodded anyway. "Then trust him. Trust that he knows what he's doing. And if things go wrong," Sonia's smile was sharp, "trust that you're strong enough to handle it." The day of the meeting, Lena insisted on going. "Absolutely not," Nikolai said for the 10th time. "You're staying here where it's safe. I'm your wife. If Elena's planning something, she needs to see that we're united. That threatening you means threatening me too, which is exactly why you're not coming. If she's setting a trap, I don't want you anywhere near it. And if she's telling the truth? If there really is a threat and you need to act fast? You'll need all the information you can get, which means you need me there to help you think clearly instead of just defaulting to violence." He stared at her. "You think I default to violence? I think you're brilliant and terrifying, and sometimes you forget there are options between talk and shoot. I help you remember the middle ground." His expression softened despite his obvious frustration. "You're not going to back down on this. Not even a little bit. Fine. But you stay in the car with Dmitri. You don't come inside, you don't engage. You just, I'll stay in the car. Lena, I promise. Cross my heart." She meant it when she said it. But when they arrived at the restaurant and Lena saw the tension in Nikolai's shoulders, the way his hand stayed near his gun, she knew staying in the car was impossible. "I'm coming in," she told Dmitri. "Mrs. Volkov, you promised—" "I lied." She opened the door before he could stop her. "You can shoot me later." Inside, the restaurant was exactly like the one where they'd met Sergei's lieutenants. Empty, cold, full of hard surfaces and harder men. Elena sat at a center table, alone, looking smaller than Lena remembered. Nikolai saw Lena and his face went through fury to resignation in half a second. "You promised." "I know. I'm sorry, but I couldn't let you do this alone. We're going to have a serious conversation about trust later." "Looking forward to it." They approached Elena together. She looked up and something flickered in her expression when she saw them side by side. "Both of you. How touching." Elena gestured to the empty chairs. "Sit. Let's talk like civilized people." Nikolai sat but kept his gun visible on the table. Lena sat beside him, trying to project confidence she didn't quite feel. "You said you have information," Nikolai said. "Start talking." Elena pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. "Boris and Yuri, they're planning to move against you. They think the transition makes you weak, that you're abandoning the old ways. They've been recruiting, pulling in people from outside the city, building a coalition." Nikolai flipped through the folder. Photos, documents, recorded conversations. His expression went cold. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because Boris and Yuri are idiots. If they take over, everything falls apart. The balance we've maintained for years collapses, and we all end up dead or in prison." Elena leaned back. "I may hate you, Nikolai. I may want revenge for my son, but I'm not stupid enough to let my personal feelings destroy everything we've built. So this is self-preservation. Call it what you want. The information is real. What you do with it is your business." Lena spoke up. "What do you want in exchange?" Elena's eyes shifted to her. "Smart question. I want immunity. For me and my people. When you move against Boris and Yuri, we stay out of it. And after, we get to keep operating without interference. That's a lot to ask." "It's less than you'd lose if they succeed." Nikolai closed the folder. "I'll need time to verify this information. If it checks out, it will. Then we'll talk terms, but Elena," his voice went soft and dangerous, "if this is a trap, if any part of this is designed to hurt me or my wife, I won't kill you quick. I'll make it last. Understand?" "Perfectly." Elena stood. "You have 48 hours. After that, they move. So decide fast." She walked out, leaving them alone in the empty restaurant. "This is bad," Nikolai said quietly. "How bad?" "Civil war bad. If Boris and Yuri really have the support Elena claims, fighting them could tear apart everything I've built. But if I don't fight them, they'll see it as weakness and move anyway." Lena took the folder, started reading through it properly. The evidence was extensive: emails, photos, financial transfers. Either Elena had spent months building an incredibly elaborate lie, or Boris and Yuri really were planning a coup. "What if we don't fight?" she said slowly. "What? What if we let them have it? The territory, the organization, all of it. Just walk away." Nikolai stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "Lena, hear me out. You're already trying to transition out of this life. This could be the excuse you need. Let Boris and Yuri take over, step back, focus on the legitimate businesses. They get what they want, you get out, everyone wins. Except the people who depend on me for protection. The deals I've made, the promises. Could be transferred, renegotiated. You're smart enough to make it work." He was quiet for a long time. Then he shook his head. "If I walk away now, it sets a precedent. Shows that threatening me works, and the next person who wants something will just threaten harder. Then we make it clear it's not a retreat, it's a choice. You're not running scared, you're choosing a different path. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like giving up. It's only giving up if you regret it." Lena took his hand. "Do you want this life, Nikolai? Really? Or do you want what we talked about, something real, something ours?" He looked down at their joined hands, at the ring on her finger that had once been his grandmother's, at the life they'd built in the cracks between violence and survival. "I want you," he said finally, "more than territory or power or respect. I want you safe and happy and alive. And if that means walking away from everything else," he took a shaky breath, "then maybe it's time." Relief flooded through her. "You mean it?" "I mean, we try. We verify Elena's information, make sure this is real. Then we start negotiations, transfer power, set boundaries, build something new." He cupped her face. "But Lena, if this goes wrong, if Boris and Yuri come after us anyway, then we handle it, together." The next 48 hours were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and tense negotiations. Victor verified Elena's information. It was real, all of it. Boris and Yuri had been planning their move for months, waiting for the right moment to strike. Nikolai called a meeting, not in a warehouse or restaurant, but in his office at the estate. All the major players, Elena, Victor, Dmitry, Sonia, even Alexei. He laid out his decision clearly. "I'm stepping back, transitioning full control to a council leadership structure. Boris and Yuri can have seats if they want them. So can anyone else who's willing to work within the new framework? The room erupted. Objections, questions, accusations of weakness. Nikolai let them talk themselves out, then raised a hand for silence. This isn't negotiable. I've spent 20 years building this organization. Now I'm choosing to evolve it. Anyone who doesn't like it can leave. But understand, leaving means you're on your own. No more protection, no more access, no more benefits. You're either in under the new system or you're out completely. Alexei spoke first. And if Boris and Yuri refuse, if they want full control, then they can try to take it, but they'll do it without my resources, my connections, or my goodwill, and we all know how long they'd last on their own. Slowly, grudgingly, the room came to a consensus. The transition would happen, power would shift, and Nikolai Volkov would become something new, not a crime boss, but a legitimate businessman with a very dangerous past. It took 6 months to make it real. 6 months of paperwork, negotiations, and careful maneuvering. 6 months of watching Boris and Yuri realize they'd won the battle, but lost the war. They got territory. But without Nikolai's infrastructure, it was almost worthless. 6 months of building something new. The foundation expanded. Lena hired a full staff, opened 2 new branches, helped hundreds of families. She still had nightmares about Sergei sometimes, still touched the scar on her lip and remembered what violence tasted like. But she also had mornings where she woke up next to Nikolai and didn't immediately check for threats. Had days where the biggest challenge was a difficult meeting instead of a death threat. It wasn't perfect. There were still dangers. People who resented the changes, who saw opportunity in targeting Nikolai's wife. But Lena had learned to handle threats, had learned when to be soft and when to show teeth, had learned, most importantly, that survival wasn't about becoming someone else. It was about choosing which parts of yourself to keep and which to let go. 1 year after Sergei's death, Lena stood in her mother's room at the care facility, watching Rebecca sleep peacefully for the first time in years. "She's doing so much better," the nurse said quietly. "The new medication is working. We might even be able to reduce her treatment schedule soon." Lena nodded, not trusting her voice. Her mother was safe, healthy, cared for. All the things Lena had worked herself to exhaustion trying to provide, now handled by professionals in a place that didn't feel like a prison. "Thank you," she finally managed. Outside, Nikolai waited in the car. He looked up when she got in, and his smile was soft and real. "How is she?" "Good. Really good." Lena buckled her seatbelt, tried to process the strange lightness in her chest. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for this to fall apart. Maybe it won't. Maybe we actually get to keep this." "You think so?" "I think we fought hard enough to deserve it." He started the car, pulled out into traffic. "Speaking of which, I got a call from the mayor's office today. They want to honor the foundation at next month's charity gala. Full recognition, public acknowledgement, the works." That's huge. "It is, which means you'll need to make a speech in front of every important person in the city. Think you can handle it?" Lena thought about the girl she'd been a year ago. Invisible, exhausted, serving people who never looked at her twice. Then she thought about who she'd become. Someone who ran board meetings and faced down criminals and loved a man who'd built an empire on blood but was trying to become something better. "Yeah," she said, "I can handle it." The gala was exactly as pretentious as Lena expected. Crystal chandeliers, designer gowns, champagne that cost more per glass than she used to make in a day. But this time, she wasn't serving the champagne. She was drinking it, wearing a dress that made her feel like royalty, standing beside her husband while the mayor gave a speech about the foundation's impact. "And now," the mayor said, "I'd like to invite Mrs. Lena Volkov to say a few words about the foundation's mission and future." Lena walked to the podium on shaking legs. The room was packed with hundreds of people, all watching her, waiting to judge. She gripped the edges of the podium and took a breath. "A year ago," she started, "I was a waitress. I worked 60-hour weeks at a restaurant where people looked through me like I was furniture. I was invisible, powerless, drowning in bills I couldn't pay for a mother I couldn't help. And I thought that was just how life worked for people like me." She paused, found Nikolai in the crowd. He nodded slightly. "Then my life changed, dramatically. I married into circumstances that gave me resources I'd never imagined having. And I had a choice. I could use those resources to make my own life comfortable and safe, or I could remember what it felt like to be powerless and try to help others escape it. The room was silent. Lena's voice grew stronger. The foundation exists because I know what it's like to be invisible, to work yourself to exhaustion and still come up short, to watch someone you love suffer because the system isn't built for people without money or connections. And I have to believe, that we can do better, that we can build systems that actually help instead of just moving money around to make wealthy people feel good about themselves. A few people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Good. So this is what the foundation is really about. It's about seeing people who are invisible, helping people who are powerless, building something that matters instead of something that just looks impressive. And if that makes some of you uncomfortable, she smiled, then maybe you should ask yourselves why. She stepped away from the podium. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Nikolai started clapping. Sonia joined him. Then Victor. Then more people, until the whole room was applauding. It wasn't the warmest reception. Some of the applause was grudging, forced. But it was real. And Lena had said what she needed to say without apologizing for it. After the gala, they drove home through the quiet city. Lena watched the lights blur past, feeling exhausted and proud and slightly drunk on champagne and adrenaline. That was a hell of a speech, Nikolai said. I think I offended half the room. At least half. Barnes looked like he was going to have a stroke. Good. He deserves one. Nikolai laughed, took her hand. You know what the best part of tonight was? What? Watching you own that room. Watching you stand up there and refuse to play their games. You're not the girl I met a year ago, Lena. You're so much more. She looked at him. This dangerous, damaged man who'd somehow become her home. Neither are you. You're not the monster anymore. You're just what? Just mine. He pulled the car over suddenly, turned to face her. Say that again. What? Say I'm yours. You're mine, she whispered, and I'm yours. And somehow, against all logic and probability, we've built something real. He kissed her then, deep and desperate and sweet. And when they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he said. More than I thought I could love anything. More than power or territory or any of the things I thought mattered. Just, I love you. I love you too. Lena smiled against his mouth. Even though you're still kind of a monster sometimes. Only for you. Promise? Promise. They drove the rest of the way home in comfortable silence. And when they finally pulled through the gates of the estate, Lena realized something had shifted. This wasn't Nikolai's house anymore. It wasn't even their house. It was home. 6 months later, Lena found out she was pregnant. She stared at the test for a solid 5 minutes, trying to process what it meant. A baby. An actual child, in this world they'd built from violence and survival and love that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. She was terrified. She was also, unexpectedly, happy. Nikolai was in his study when she found him, reviewing contracts for one of the legitimate businesses. He looked up, smiled, then saw her expression and went still. What's wrong? Lena held up the test. Nothing. Everything. I don't know. He crossed to her in 3 steps, took the test with shaking hands. You're pregnant. Yeah. How long have you known? About 7 minutes. He laughed, the sound rough and surprised. Then he pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. We're having a baby. Are you okay with that? Because I know we never really talked about kids, and this world isn't exactly... I'm more than okay with it. He pulled back, and there were actual tears in his eyes. I'm terrified and happy and completely unprepared. But yeah, I want this. If you want this. Lena thought about her own childhood, the poverty, the struggle, her mother working herself sick to keep them afloat. Then she thought about the life she could give this child. Not perfect, not without danger, but full of love and resources and parents who'd fought like hell to become people worthy of raising a kid. I want this, she said. I'm scared, but I want it. Then we do it. We figure it out. We build something good for them. Something better than what we had. Something better than what we were. They stood there in his study, holding each other, thinking about futures they'd never dared imagine. And Lena realized something that should have been obvious from the beginning. She wasn't the invisible girl anymore, wasn't the powerless waitress or the kidnapped victim or even the woman who'd killed a man to survive. She was Lena Volkov, wife, philanthropist, future mother, someone who'd been broken and rebuilt herself stronger, someone who'd learned that survival wasn't about becoming someone else. It was about choosing which parts of yourself to keep and which to let burn away. And she'd chosen to keep the soft parts, the parts that cared, that helped, that loved, despite knowing love could destroy you. Because those were the parts that made her human instead of just another monster in expensive clothes. 8 months later, Rebecca Marie Volkov was born at 3:47 in the morning, weighing 6 pounds and screaming loud enough to wake the whole hospital. Lena held her daughter and cried. Nikolai stood beside the bed looking terrified and awed in equal measure. And somewhere in the distance, the city carried on, full of violence and beauty and people trying to survive in whatever way they could. But in that hospital room, none of it mattered. Just this, just family, just love that had grown in the cracks between impossible circumstances. Lena looked at her daughter's tiny face and made a promise. This child would never be invisible, would never feel powerless or alone, would grow up knowing she mattered, knowing she was seen, knowing that strength came in many forms and survival was only the beginning. "She's perfect," Nikolai whispered. "She's ours," Lena corrected, "which means she's probably going to be complicated and stubborn and a little bit dangerous. Like her mother. Like both of us." He kissed Lena's forehead, then the baby's. "We're going to screw this up sometimes." "Probably. But we'll try our best. That's all anyone can do." Outside, the sun was rising over the city. A new day, a new beginning. And Lena Volkov, once invisible, once powerless, once so afraid of being seen that she'd made herself into a ghost, held her daughter and felt something she'd spent her whole life chasing. She felt like she belonged, not to Nikolai's world or her old life or the foundation or any single identity. She belonged to herself, to the choices she'd made and the person she'd become, and the family she'd built from ashes and stubbornness. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. 2 years later, they sold the estate. The foundation had grown too big for one person to manage, so Lena hired people she trusted and stepped back into an advisory role. Nikolai's businesses were fully legitimate now, boring things like real estate and imports, nothing that required guns or threats. They bought a house in the suburbs, normal-sized, with a yard for Rebecca to play in and neighbors who didn't know or care about their past. Lena planted flowers. Nikolai learned to grill. They were almost impossibly ordinary. Sometimes, late at night, Lena would wake up and check the doors, old instincts refusing to die. Sometimes Nikolai still kept a gun in the safe, just in case. Sometimes they both had nightmares about the year that had changed everything, but mostly they were happy. Rebecca's second birthday party was full of normal people. Other parents from her playgroup, Lena's mother in her wheelchair, even a few of Nikolai's former associates who'd also found ways out of the life. Lena watched her daughter destroy a cupcake with toddler enthusiasm and felt something settle in her chest. Peace, maybe. Or just acceptance that this was real, this was hers, this was the life she'd chosen and fought for and somehow managed to keep. "You okay?" Nikolai asked, appearing at her elbow with juice boxes. "Yeah, just thinking." "About?" "About how a year and a half ago I was invisible, and now I'm—" She gestured around at the party, the house, their daughter. "This. It's surreal. Surreal good or surreal bad? Surreal perfect, which scares me because perfect things don't last." He set down the juice boxes, took her hands. "Maybe not. But we'll deal with whatever comes. Together, like we always do. Promise?" "Promise." Rebecca toddled over, frosting in her hair, demanding to be picked up. Lena scooped her up and held her close, breathing in the smell of sugar and baby shampoo. This was what she'd been fighting for all along. Not power or visibility or revenge. Just this, the simple, impossible gift of being seen and loved and chosen every single day. She'd killed for it. Bled for it, rebuilt herself from scratch to deserve it. And looking at her daughter's face, sticky with frosting and pure joy, Lena knew without question that it had been worth it. Every choice, every scar, every moment of fear and fury and fighting to survive. All of it had led here, to this life, this family, this impossible, beautiful, perfectly imperfect, happy ending. And Lena Volkov, once invisible, once powerless, once too afraid to be anything but a ghost, finally, truly, felt like she was home.